I never authorized that sale. That brooch belongs to me. What are you talking about? It can't be sold. No, no. It's gone.
I'm looking at the brooch right now. It looks like the one from the estate, but something's not adding up.
Oh, please tell me it's not a fake.
I can't confirm over the phone. You need to...
You knew her? With my signature? I'm so sorry, Miss Davies. No, I'm sorry.
The call came at 8:17 on a Tuesday morning while I was standing in my kitchen waiting for the coffee to finish brewing. "Mrs. Underwood," a man asked. "This is Walter Hayes. I need to confirm something before I proceed. Did you authorize the sale of your sapphire brooch?" My hand froze around the mug. I hadn't seen Walter in years, and I had never authorized anyone to sell that brooch. I hurried upstairs, opened my jewelry box, and felt my stomach drop. The brooch was gone. "Who brought it to you?" I whispered. There was a pause. "Your daughter-in-law, Vanessa." Then Walter lowered his voice. "And Laverne. She brought paperwork with your signature on it." I knew immediately there was only one problem. I had never signed anything. If you've ever had someone you trusted cross a line you never imagined they would tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you're comfortable sharing, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to stay with me because that phone call was only the beginning. For several seconds after Walter hung up, I stood in my bedroom with the phone still pressed against my ear. The house was silent, too silent. My jewelry box sat open on the dresser in front of me, its dark velvet compartments looking strangely unfamiliar. I had owned that box for nearly 40 years. Harold bought it for me on our 10th wedding anniversary after watching me keep my necklaces tangled together in a little ceramic dish. "Every woman needs somewhere safe for the things that matter," he had said. I remembered laughing at him. Now I wasn't laughing. I reached into the compartment where the sapphire brooch had always rested. Empty. I checked again even though I knew exactly where I kept it. Then I began looking through everything else. The first thing I noticed was my mother's gold bracelet. Gone. It wasn't particularly fashionable. The clasp had been repaired twice, and there was a tiny scratch near the hinge. But my mother had worn that bracelet almost every Sunday of my childhood. She gave it to me 3 weeks before she died. My fingers moved faster. I opened the smaller drawer beneath the necklaces. My grandmother's pearl earrings were missing too. "No," I whispered. I pulled the entire drawer out. Nothing. I began laying everything that remained across the bed. 2 inexpensive necklaces, a pair of silver earrings Denise gave me for my 60th birthday, my wedding band, several costume pieces. But the valuable pieces, the pieces with histories, were disappearing from my inventory one after another. Then I looked for Harold's watch. Technically, it had been mine for years. On our 25th anniversary, Harold had surprised me with a slim gold watch. We had been struggling financially that year because Marcus was finishing college, and I had been furious when I realized how much Harold must have spent. He only smiled. 25 years of putting up with me deserved something better than flowers. After Harold died, I rarely wore it because seeing it on my wrist sometimes hurt too much. But I never considered selling it. The compartment where I kept the watch was empty. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The sapphire brooch, my mother's bracelet, my grandmother's pearls, Harold's watch, 4 pieces. 4 pieces I would never have given away without remembering. That was when the fear inside me began changing into something colder. Because jewelry doesn't walk out of a locked bedroom by itself. Someone had been inside my room. Someone who knew where to look. I closed my eyes and thought about the previous few months. Vanessa had been visiting more often. At the time I had thought it was kindness. After Harold died, I became accustomed to doing everything myself. I mowed the small patch of lawn until my knees convinced me otherwise. I paid my own bills, drove myself to appointments, cooked, cleaned, and handled every repairman who came through the door. Vanessa had started telling me I shouldn't have to work so hard. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else," she'd said one Saturday. "Let us take care of you a little." It had sounded sweet. So began with the hall closet, then the pantry. Then one afternoon, she offered to help organize my bedroom. I remembered standing near the doorway while she folded sweaters. "You have so much stuff, Laverne," she'd said with a laugh. "You could probably empty half this house and never miss any of it." I had laughed too. Now those words made the back of my neck prickle. There had been other visits. Vanessa taking boxes to Goodwill. Vanessa offering to sort old paperwork. Vanessa asking which furniture I still cared about. Once she'd even picked up an old silver serving tray and asked whether it was real silver. I hadn't thought anything of it. I looked around my bedroom. For the first time in 32 years, my own home felt violated. My first instinct was to call Marcus. I picked up my phone, then stopped. Marcus loved his wife, and I loved my son. An accusation like this couldn't be pulled back once spoken. If I called him screaming that Vanessa was a thief and somehow there was an innocent explanation, I could damage our family permanently. I needed facts. Harold had always said that when emotions were loud, facts needed to be louder. So I called Walter again. He answered almost immediately. "Mrs. Underwood, Walter. Please don't let anyone take that brooch. I won't. And don't sell it. I already placed a hold on the transaction." I swallowed. "Did Vanessa say I gave it to her?" There was a pause. "Not exactly. What did she say?" Walter seemed reluctant. "She said you had asked her to help liquidate several personal items." "Liquidate, yes." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I didn't use words like liquidate when talking about my mother's jewelry. "What exactly did she tell you?" Walter exhaled. "She said you were simplifying your life." There it was again. That phrase, simplifying. Vanessa had used it before. She had told me I should simplify my kitchen, simplify my closets, simplify the house. I had assumed she meant decluttering. Now I wondered whether she'd meant something very different. "What else?" Walter hesitated again. "Mrs. Underwood, I'd rather discuss the documents with you in person." My stomach tightened. "Walter." "Yes, I need you to tell me." Another pause. "She said the family had been helping you manage certain things lately." "What things?" "Your belongings, appointments, some household decisions." My grip tightened around the phone. "I manage my own appointments. I understand. And I manage my own house. I understand that too. Then why would she tell you otherwise? I can't answer that." I walked toward the window. Outside, my neighbor was pulling weeds from her flower bed. A delivery truck moved slowly down the street. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower started. Everything looked completely ordinary. Inside my house, something was coming apart. "Did Vanessa tell you there was something wrong with me?" Walter didn't answer immediately. That silence gave me my answer before his words did. "She suggested you've been having some difficulty remembering things." I felt as though someone had slapped me. Remembering things, she didn't describe it as a diagnosis. She said you've been forgetting conversations and that the family has been stepping in to help. I sat down again. Forgetting conversations. I thought about every interaction I'd had with Vanessa recently. The little comments. "Remember, Laverne, I already told you that. I think you're mixing up the dates. You must have forgotten." They had seemed harmless. Annoying sometimes, but harmless. I had even joked about getting older. Now those remarks returned with a different weight. "Walter, did she tell you I forgot giving her permission to sell my jewelry?" "Essentially, yes." My chest tightened. "And you didn't believe her I didn't say that." "Then why did you call me?" "Because I recognized the brooch." I waited. Walter continued. "Your husband brought it to me years ago for an appraisal. That surprised me." "Harold did?" "Yes. He was very particular about documenting it. I remembered Harold handling insurance paperwork after my mother died, but I had never paid much attention." Walter continued. "When I saw the brooch yesterday, I remembered it. And when I reviewed the paperwork Vanessa provided, something bothered me. What I'd rather show you. Is my signature on it?" "Yes." My throat went dry. I looked at my hand resting on my knee. For more than 30 years, I had signed insurance documents, payroll forms, school permission slips, mortgage papers, birthday cards, tax returns. I knew my signature, and I knew I hadn't signed anything for Vanessa. "Walter, are there other pieces listed?" Another silence. "Yes." How many? I don't want to misstate anything over the phone. Come in and we'll go through it together. I stared at the open jewelry box. Has she brought you anything besides the brooch? Not to me. That answer didn't comfort me, because Walter was only one appraiser. If Vanessa had taken 4 pieces, she could have gone to 4 different places. I thanked him and arranged to meet him the following morning. Before ending the call, he said something that stayed with me. Mrs. Underwood, until we understand what's happening, I suggest you secure anything valuable that's still in your home. After we hung up, I walked downstairs and locked the front door, then the back door. Then I stood in the hallway feeling foolish. Vanessa had a key. I had given it to her myself. 2 years earlier, after I slipped on the basement stairs, Marcus insisted someone nearby should have one for emergencies. Vanessa had smiled when I handed it over. We'll only use it if you need us. I suddenly couldn't remember every time she'd been inside my house. I went room by room. Nothing obvious was missing from the living room. The silver serving tray was still in the dining room cabinet. Harold's old pocket watch was still in my desk. But now I was looking at everything differently, not as possessions, as targets. That afternoon, Denise called. I nearly told her everything. Instead, I said I was tired. I wasn't ready to hear myself say the words aloud. My daughter-in-law stole from me, because once I said it, the betrayal would become real. At 6:30 that evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Hi Laverne, just checking on you. Marcus said we haven't heard from you today. Everything okay? I stared at the screen. For years, I would have read that message as concern. That evening, it felt like something else. A question. A test. Did I know? I typed 3 different responses and erased them all. Finally, I wrote, everything is fine, just having a quiet day. Her reply came less than a minute later. Good. I worry about you being there alone sometimes. I read that sentence twice. Then a third time. I worry about you being there alone. Only 24 hours earlier, those words might have made me feel loved. Now I wondered what story Vanessa was telling when I wasn't in the room. I went upstairs and closed the jewelry box. Then I carried it into Harold's old study and locked it inside the small fireproof safe. As I turned the key, I realized something that frightened me more than the missing jewelry. Vanessa hadn't simply taken 4 things from my house. She had apparently walked into an appraiser's office carrying my property, my name, my signature, and a story about my failing memory. And she had expected all 4 of them to belong to her. The question was no longer whether my daughter-in-law had crossed a line. The question was how long she had been preparing to cross it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa standing in my bedroom, opening drawers with the same calm expression she wore when she offered to help fold my sweaters. But worse than that was Walter's voice. She said, "You've been forgetting conversations." By 7 the next morning, I had made a decision. I needed to talk to Marcus before I met Walter. My son had always been the person I believed would defend me when it mattered. When Harold died 4 years earlier, Marcus had sat beside me through funeral arrangements, insurance paperwork, and the terrible first weeks when every room in the house seemed to contain his father's absence. "You'll never have to handle anything alone, Mom," he had told me. I believed him, so I called. Marcus answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Mom. Everything okay? I need to ask you something." My tone must have caught his attention because the background noise disappeared. "Sure. Did Vanessa tell you I gave her permission to sell some of my jewelry?" There was silence. Not surprise. Silence. That difference mattered. "Marcus." He sighed. "Mom, maybe we should talk about this in person." My stomach tightened. "It's a simple question." Another pause. "Yes." I stood beside the kitchen counter. "What exactly did she tell you?" "She said you wanted to start getting rid of things you weren't using anymore. And you believed that. She said the 2 of you had discussed it. We didn't." Okay. The way he said it made me angry. Not because he called me a liar. Because he sounded like someone trying to calm a confused child. "Marcus, your wife took my sapphire brooch to an appraiser yesterday." I know. Those 2 words hit me harder than I expected. "You knew." "Vanessa mentioned she was helping you get some things valued." "Valued. She was trying to sell it." He went quiet again. I continued. She also had paperwork with my signature. That finally changed his voice. What paperwork? I don't know yet. I'm meeting the appraiser this morning. Wait, who called you Walter Hayes? And he just called you out of nowhere. He recognized my brooch. Marcus exhaled slowly. Mom, Vanessa told me you asked her to help. I did not. I'm not saying you did. You just told me she said I did. I'm trying to understand what happened. So am I. There was another silence. Then Marcus said something I wasn't prepared for. Is it possible you two talked about it and you don't remember? For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. What? I'm just asking. No, you're not just asking, Mom. You're asking whether I forgot giving someone permission to take my mother's jewelry out of my bedroom and sell it. I didn't say it like that. But that is what you're asking. He sounded uncomfortable. Vanessa said you've been having a little trouble remembering things lately. My hand tightened around the phone. There it was. Not from Walter this time, from my own son. What things, Mom? Please don't turn this into something bigger. Give me one example. He hesitated. The doctor's appointment last month. I didn't forget that appointment. Vanessa said you did. The office changed the time. She said they didn't. I stared across my kitchen. What else? Your house keys. What about them? You called Vanessa because you couldn't find them. I found them later. I know. So losing keys once means I'm losing my memory, no. Then what else? Marcus sighed. There was the electric bill. I remembered that. A payment had appeared twice on my online account. I had assumed I accidentally submitted it twice. You paid it 2 times, Marcus said. One duplicated payment. And you didn't remember making the first one. Because I wasn't sure whether I had. Exactly. The word landed between us. Exactly. As though uncertainty about one online payment proved something. I felt anger rising, but underneath it was something much more painful. Fear. Not fear that I was losing my memory. Fear that someone had already convinced my son I was. Marcus, how long has Vanessa been talking to you about this? She isn't talking about you behind your back. That wasn't my question. A few months, maybe. My heart sank. Months. What has she been saying? She worries about you. I want specifics. Mom, specifics, Marcus, he finally answered. She said sometimes you repeat questions. She said you've forgotten conversations. She said you've been misplacing things more often. I closed my eyes. I could almost hear Vanessa saying it. Soft voice, concerned expression, never accusing, always helping. I thought back to Christmas when she had said, Laverne, you already asked me that. Had I? Maybe. People repeat themselves. At 67, sometimes I walked into a room and forgot why I went there. So did Denise. So had Harold at 50. But Vanessa had apparently been collecting those ordinary moments and arranging them into something else. Did she ever tell you I needed help managing my money? Marcus didn't answer immediately. That frightened me more than if he'd said yes. Marcus. She said maybe we should keep an eye on things. What does that mean? She wasn't trying to take over. I didn't ask what she was trying to do. My voice became quieter. I asked what she said. He finally admitted it. She suggested we make sure bills were getting paid correctly. I sat down. I had managed payroll reports for hundreds of employees during my working years. I had balanced household finances through recessions, tuition payments, medical bills, and a mortgage. Harold used to joke that I could find a missing nickel in a bank vault. And now my son was discussing whether someone needed to watch my bills. Without telling me. Why didn't you ask me? I didn't want to embarrass you. Embarrass me. If there wasn't a problem, I didn't want you thinking we believed there was one. But you did believe there was one. No. I was concerned. Because Vanessa told you to be. That isn't fair. I almost laughed. Fair. My jewelry was missing. My signature had appeared on paperwork I had never seen. My daughter-in-law had told an appraiser I couldn't remember conversations. And my son wanted to discuss fairness. I stood and walked toward the window. Do you remember what your father used to say when you were a teenager? Marcus sighed. Mom, I don't know. He said never make a judgment after hearing only one side. I remember. Apparently you forgot. The silence that followed was painful. I regretted the sharpness immediately, but I didn't take it back. Finally, Marcus said, I think we should all sit down tonight. No, why not? Because I'm not discussing this with Vanessa until I know what she gave Walter. You're treating her like she's done something criminal. I haven't called her anything. But you're implying Marcus 4 pieces of my jewelry are missing. He stopped. 4. That was the first genuine shock I'd heard from him. Yes, I thought it was just the brooch. My mother's bracelet is gone. My grandmother's pearls are gone. The watch your father gave me is gone. Vanessa didn't tell me that. I imagine there are several things Vanessa hasn't told you. Mom, I have to go. Wait. No, I'm meeting Walter. Let me come with you. I considered it. Part of me wanted my son beside me. Another part remembered the way he'd asked if I had forgotten. I need to do this myself. Why? Because apparently I need to start proving what I know before people decide what I remember. I ended the call. For several minutes I stood in my kitchen shaking. Then something strange happened. I began doubting myself. That is the cruel thing about someone questioning your memory. Once the suggestion enters your mind, you start reviewing everything. Had Vanessa and I discussed selling anything? I opened my calendar. Nothing. I checked my text messages with her. There were messages about groceries, a church fundraiser, a plumber, a photograph she'd sent from Marcus's birthday dinner. Nothing about jewelry. I searched the word sell. Nothing. Jewelry. Nothing. Brooch. Nothing. Then I opened my email. Still nothing. If I had made such a major decision, why was there no trace of it? I went upstairs and retrieved a notebook from Harold's study. On the first page I wrote the date. Then I wrote Walter Hayes called at 8:17 a.m. Tuesday regarding sapphire brooch. Underneath I listed every missing item. Then every conversation I remembered with Vanessa concerning my belongings. I wasn't doing it because I thought I was losing my memory. I was doing it because I suddenly understood that memory alone would no longer be enough. I needed records. Before leaving for Walter's office, my phone buzzed. Marcus. I almost ignored it. Then I saw his message. Mom, I spoke to Vanessa. She says you absolutely gave her permission. She thinks this whole situation proves exactly why we've been worried. I read it once, then again. Exactly why we've been worried. We. Vanessa had somehow turned my missing jewelry into evidence against me. For the first time, I understood how dangerous the situation really was. If I accused her, I was confused. If I became angry, I was unstable. If I remembered something differently, my memory was failing. She had created a version of me that could explain away anything I said. But Vanessa had made one mistake. She had taken the sapphire brooch to a man who remembered it. And unlike my son, Walter Hayes had called me first. I slipped the notebook into my purse, picked up my car keys, and headed for the door. I wasn't going to Walter's office to prove I still had my memory. I was going to find out why my daughter-in-law needed everyone to believe I didn't. Walter Hayes worked out of a brick building near downtown Richmond that looked more like a private bank than an auction house. I arrived 10 minutes early. For several moments, I stayed in my car with both hands resting on the steering wheel. Marcus's message was still on my phone. She thinks this whole situation proves exactly why we've been worried. I read it one last time before putting the phone into my purse. I wasn't confused, I wasn't helpless, and I wasn't going into Walter's office to defend my sanity. I was going there to see evidence. Inside, a receptionist led me through a quiet showroom filled with glass cases, antique clocks, silver pieces, and paintings whose prices I probably didn't want to know. Walter appeared from a hallway. He was taller than I remembered, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Underwood. Laverne, please. He shook my hand. Thank you for coming. Where's my brooch safe? That was the only answer I wanted first. Walter led me into a private consultation room. A small black velvet box sat on the table. My heart tightened when he opened it. There it was. The sapphire brooch. For anyone else, it might have looked like an old-fashioned piece of jewelry, an oval blue stone surrounded by tiny diamonds in a gold setting. To me, it was my mother standing in front of the church mirror on Easter Sunday. It was her fastening that brooch to her navy dress while telling me to stop fidgeting. It was the afternoon she gave it to me and said, "Things don't matter, baby. But sometimes things carry people with them. I reached for it. Walter didn't stop me. My fingers trembled as I lifted it from the velvet. Vanessa had this, yes. Yesterday, shortly after 11. I closed my hand around it. I'm taking it home. Of course. I placed the brooch carefully inside my purse. Then I looked at Walter. Show me the paperwork. His expression changed. Professional. Serious. He opened a folder. The first page looked ordinary enough. My name appeared at the top. Laverne Underwood. My address was underneath. Then came a paragraph stating that I authorized Vanessa Underwood to arrange appraisal and sale of specified personal property on my behalf. I read it twice. Then my eyes moved to the bottom. There was my name again, this time in cursive. For half a second I understood how someone could believe it. The L curved the way mine did. The U in Underwood was close. But whoever had copied my signature made one mistake. I had changed the way I signed my last name years earlier after arthritis began bothering my right thumb. My real signature had become shorter and more compressed. This version looked like my older signature, the one on documents from years ago. That isn't mine. Walter nodded slowly. You're certain? I looked directly at him. I've been signing my own name for more than 50 years. I'm certain. I had to ask. I understand. He turned the page toward himself. When your daughter-in-law presented this, she said you'd signed it recently. I didn't. Did you ever give her written authority to handle personal property? Number power of attorney. Number any authorization to sell belongings. Number Walter leaned back. Then we have a problem. We already had a problem when she walked out of my bedroom with my jewelry. He didn't argue. I pointed to the signature. Where would she get something like that? I can't know. But I had an idea. Old documents. Vanessa had offered to help organize Harold's study. There were insurance forms, mortgage papers, tax returns, estate documents, hundreds of examples of my signature. A chill moved through me. There's more, Walter said. He pulled another page from the folder. It was titled Personal Property Inventory. I expected to see the sapphire brooch. I did. But beneath it were other items. Gold bracelet, pearl earrings, gold wristwatch. My stomach tightened. Those were the missing pieces. Then the list continued. Sterling silver serving set, antique mantel clock, 2 framed oil paintings, gold pocket watch, diamond anniversary ring, china collection. There were notes beside several entries. Approximate condition, possible value, location, location. I stared at that column. Dining room cabinet, study desk, upstairs bedroom, living room mantel. Someone hadn't simply made a list of jewelry. Someone had made a map of valuables inside my house. Where did this come from? Your daughter-in-law provided it. I looked at Walter. She gave you this entire list. Yes. Did she ask you to appraise all of it? She asked whether we could assist with an estate downsizing. Estate. That word made me feel suddenly cold. I'm not dead. Walter's face softened. That's not necessarily what estate means in this context. I know what it means. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I also know I'm not moving. Walter folded his hands. She indicated you were preparing for a transition. What transition? She wasn't specific. Did she say assisted living? No. Number, a smaller house. She mentioned that the family was evaluating options. I laughed once. It wasn't humor. The family is evaluating options for my life, and apparently nobody thought to invite me. Walter said nothing. I looked again at the inventory. The silver serving set had belonged to Harold's parents. The mantel clock came from his grandfather. One of the paintings had hung in our first apartment. Vanessa knew those stories. I'd told her. Yet on the page they had been reduced to objects with estimated values. I felt violated in a way that had nothing to do with money. Why did you call me? I asked. Walter glanced toward my purse where I'd placed the brooch. Because of that piece. I explained that Harold had first contacted him nearly 15 years earlier after my mother died. I remembered the insurance paperwork but hadn't known the details. Your husband was unusually careful, Walter said. That sounds like Harold. Walter smiled faintly. He brought several pieces for documentation. Photographs, measurements, stone identification, provenance where available. Why? He told me they belonged to his wife's family, and he wanted there to be no confusion if anything happened to him. My eyes burned. Even dead Harold was somehow sitting beside me, protecting details I hadn't thought to protect myself. Walter opened an older file. Inside was a photograph of my sapphire brooch. Below it was an appraisal number and a description. Then he showed me a note. Owner Laverne Underwood. Walter tapped another line. Owner authorization required before transfer or sale. I stared at it. Harold requested that, yes, why he said it wasn't his property to give away. That nearly broke me. My husband had understood something my own son was beginning to forget. Love did not create ownership. Walter continued. When Vanessa brought the brooch in, I recognized the setting. I checked the old record. The name matched yours, but the person standing in front of me wasn't you. So you asked her. I asked whether you were available to confirm the sale. What did she say? Walter hesitated. She said speaking with you might make the process more difficult. I felt my pulse in my throat. Why? She said you sometimes became distressed when discussing possessions because you didn't always remember what decisions had already been made. There it was again. My memory. Always my memory. What did you say? I told her I couldn't proceed without verification, and she became impatient. Then she showed me the authorization letter. Walter glanced at the copied signature. That made me more uncomfortable, not less. Why? Because if the authorization was valid, there was no reason she should object to a simple confirmation call. That was the first thing anyone had said in 2 days that made me feel completely seen. Not protected, not managed, seen. Walter had done what Marcus hadn't. He had checked. I looked back at the inventory. Did she leave this with you? A copy. Yes. Can I have one? I can provide copies of everything she submitted regarding the proposed transaction, please. While he went to make them, I took out my notebook. I wrote the date and time. Then Walter confirms Vanessa presented written authorization. Signature is not mine. Inventory includes multiple household valuables. Vanessa described situation as estate downsizing. Vanessa told Walter I may not remember decisions. When Walter returned, I asked him to write down the date. Vanessa came in, and exactly what item she'd presented. He did. I placed everything into my purse. Before leaving, I asked one more question. If I hadn't been listed in your old records, would you have sold it? Walter considered carefully. If the documentation had appeared sufficient, and there were no other concerns, the transaction could have progressed. That answer frightened me more than I expected, because Vanessa's plan had almost worked. One old note from Harold had stopped it. Outside, I sat in my car but didn't start the engine. I pulled out the inventory again. The jewelry was terrible enough, but this was bigger. Vanessa knew where things were in my house. She knew what might be valuable. She had apparently copied my signature, and she had constructed an explanation for what would happen if I objected. I would simply be the confused older woman who had forgotten giving permission. My phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring. A minute later he called again, then a text arrived. Mom, Vanessa is upset. Please don't do anything until we can all talk. I stared at those words. Don't do anything. As if I were the dangerous one. I placed the phone face down. Then I looked at the signature again. Something about it bothered me. Not just that it was false. It was familiar. I had seen that exact version of my signature somewhere. Then I remembered. 3 years earlier, Vanessa had helped Marcus scan old insurance documents after a pipe burst in their basement. I had given them copies of several family records for safekeeping. Among them was an old homeowner's insurance form, signed by me nearly 12 years ago, back when my signature still looked exactly like the one on Walter's paper. I felt the final piece settle into place. Vanessa hadn't guessed how I signed my name. She had copied it. And if she was willing to copy my signature onto authorization for jewelry, I needed to know what else my name might already be sitting underneath. I started the car. I wasn't going home to confront Vanessa. Not yet. I was going home to find every old document she had ever been allowed near. Because the list in my purse told me the jewelry wasn't the end of this. It might only have been the beginning. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had stopped thinking about the missing jewelry as the beginning of the problem. It was evidence of something that had begun months earlier. I carried Walter's folder into Harold's study, locked the door behind me, and spread everything across the desk. The false authorization, the inventory, the copied signature. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence across the top of a fresh page. When did Vanessa start telling people I couldn't remember? I sat there for nearly an hour, reconstructing the previous 6 months. The first incident I remembered happened in January. Marcus and Vanessa had come over for Sunday dinner. Halfway through dessert, Vanessa casually mentioned that I'd left my back door unlocked earlier that week. "You have to be more careful, Laverne," she'd said. I remembered looking at her. "How do you know I stopped by and noticed it?" At the time, I'd been embarrassed. Maybe I had forgotten. But now another detail bothered me. Vanessa had a key. Why would she try the door if she had her own key? The second incident happened in February. I had misplaced my house keys. I remembered calling Vanessa because she had been at my house the previous afternoon, helping organize a kitchen cabinet. "Did you happen to see my keys?" I'd asked. She said no. 20 minutes later, she arrived and helped me search. She eventually found them in the drawer beneath the telephone table. "See," she'd said, smiling. "You put things in safe places and then forget where the safe place was." I had laughed. But I never kept keys in that drawer. Not once. I wrote it down. Then came the electric bill. Then the changed doctor's appointment. Then the little remarks. "You already told me that. We talked about this last week." Don't you remember, one by one, none of them seemed important. Together they looked different. My phone rang. Denise Carter. This time I answered. "Girl, are you alive?" she demanded. "You sounded strange yesterday." Despite everything, I smiled. Denise had been my closest friend for more than 30 years. We'd met when our sons played Little League, and somewhere between uncomfortable bleachers and terrible concession stand coffee, we'd become family. "I need you to come over." Her voice changed immediately. "What happened?" "I'll tell you when you get here." She arrived 40 minutes later, carrying 2 cups of coffee and enough concern for both of us. We sat at the kitchen table. I told her everything. Walter's call, the missing jewelry, Vanessa, Marcus, the false signature, the inventory. Denise didn't interrupt until I finished. Then she said, "That woman stole from you." "I know. No, Laverne. Say it." I looked down at my coffee. "Vanessa stole from me. And forged your signature." "Apparently." "Stop saying apparently. You know whether you signed that paper." "I didn't." "Then she forged it." Denise leaned back. "And Marcus knows. He knows some of it. And he's defending her. He thinks there might be another explanation." Denise's mouth tightened. "What explanation?" "Your pearls packed themselves a suitcase." I almost laughed. Almost. Then I told her about Vanessa's claims regarding my memory. Denise stopped joking. "What claims?" I listed them. "The keys, the bill, the appointment, the unlocked door." Her expression became increasingly serious. Finally, she said, "Laverne, you don't have memory problems. Everybody forgets things. That's not what I'm saying." She leaned forward. "I spent 4 days with you in Charleston last spring. You remembered every reservation, every street we parked on, and exactly how much I owed you for that hotel room. That was different. You reminded me that I'd left my reading glasses at breakfast before I realized they were missing." I smiled weakly. "Maybe you're the one with memory problems." "Very funny." Then Denise grew quiet. "Do you remember when Vanessa told Marcus you forgot his birthday dinner?" I frowned. "What, at your house?" "Maybe 3 months ago." Slowly I remembered. Marcus and Vanessa had stopped by unexpectedly. Vanessa said something about the restaurant reservation. I had looked confused because I thought the dinner was Saturday. Vanessa said it was Friday. Marcus had laughed and said Mom's calendar is getting crowded. But later the reservation turned out to be Saturday after all. I had assumed Vanessa made a mistake. Denise remembered because I had called her afterward. You were right, she said. The reservation was Saturday. I stared at her. Why would Vanessa tell Marcus I got it wrong? Denise didn't answer. She didn't need to. I opened my notebook and added it. Marcus's birthday dinner. Then Denise said, "What about Charleston? What about it? You remember that dinner when she claimed you'd given her the silver candlesticks?" My head snapped up. I didn't give her those. I know. You told her she could borrow them. The memory returned. Vanessa had hosted a dinner for some clients and asked to borrow my silver candlesticks. 2 weeks later, when I asked for them back, she looked surprised. "I thought you said I could keep them." I'd corrected her immediately. She apologized and returned them. At the time, it seemed like a misunderstanding. Now it looked like another test. How firmly would I remember? Would I challenge her? Would anyone believe me if she told a different version? I felt suddenly sick. "Denise, what if she's been doing this intentionally?" Denise didn't soften her answer. "I think you already know she has." I got up and paced toward the window. "But why for money maybe? She doesn't need my money." "Are you sure I wasn't?" Marcus earned a good salary. Vanessa sold real estate. They had a beautiful house, 2 newer cars, expensive vacations. But appearances weren't bank statements. Still, stealing jewelry was one thing. Convincing people I was losing my memory was something else. "Why involve Marcus?" I asked. Denise looked at me carefully. "Because he's the person people would believe." That sentence stayed in the room. My son. If Vanessa told a stranger that I was confused, they might question her. If my own son agreed, that changed everything. I sat down again. "She's been making him watch me." Denise nodded. "And every normal mistake you make becomes proof." The thought made my skin crawl. I remembered Thanksgiving. I'd walked into the pantry and forgotten what I wanted. Vanessa laughed. Another senior moment. Everyone smiled, including me. Christmas, I repeated a story about Harold. Vanessa touched my arm. "You told us that earlier, remember? Had I maybe?" But now I wondered whether I had. The most frightening part wasn't that Vanessa might have lied. It was that she'd made me question myself. I opened my phone. There were hundreds of messages between Vanessa and me. Nothing directly incriminating. Then I thought about Marcus. What if she's been texting him? Denise raised an eyebrow. "You think he'll show you?" "I don't know." As if summoned by the conversation, Marcus called. I answered. "Mom." His voice sounded tired. "Have you met with the appraiser?" "Yes." "And the signature isn't mine." Silence. "Are you sure?" I closed my eyes. There it was again. "Marcus, listen to yourself. I didn't mean you asked whether I'm sure I recognize my own signature. I'm trying to understand. Then start asking Vanessa questions instead of me." He became defensive. "She says you signed it at your kitchen table." "When? A few weeks ago." "Date? I don't know." "Ask her." "Why?" "Because I want a date." He sighed. "Mom, this feels like an interrogation. 4 pieces of jewelry are missing from my house. Maybe an interrogation is overdue." Marcus didn't respond. Then I asked something else. "How many times has Vanessa texted you about my memory?" The silence was immediate. My stomach tightened. "Marcus." "A few." "How many?" "I don't count them. Read one." "I'm not going through private messages. They're about me." "That doesn't make them yours." He was right technically, but his refusal told me enough. "What does she say?" "Mostly little things." "Like what?" "That you missed appointments. Misplaced things. Repeated yourself." "Does she use the word worried?" Marcus hesitated. "Yes. Of course she did. Worried sounded loving. Worried sounded responsible. Worried could disguise almost anything. Has she ever suggested I shouldn't handle my own finances?" Another pause. "Not exactly." "What exactly did she say?" "She said we might want to start paying closer attention." "Has she suggested you get access to my accounts?" "No." That answer came quickly enough that I believed him. "Not yet." I wrote those 2 words in my notebook after we hung up. "Not yet." Denise watched me. "What are you thinking, that Vanessa hasn't finished whatever she's doing?" The room felt colder. I looked again at Walter's inventory. Jewelry, silver, paintings, clock, items from nearly every room. Then I thought about all the small stories Vanessa had been feeding Marcus. One forgotten appointment, one missing key, one duplicate payment, one repeated question. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they created a portrait. An aging widow, living alone, becoming forgetful, needing help, needing supervision, maybe eventually needing someone else to make decisions. I stared at my own name on the forged document. Laverne Underwood. It looked like my signature. It wasn't my choice. And suddenly I understood what frightened me most. Vanessa wasn't simply taking things from my house. She was building a version of me that would make it easier for everyone to believe those things had been given willingly. That afternoon, Denise helped me create a timeline. Dates, conversations, missing items, every remark I could remember. When we finished, 4 pages lay across the kitchen table. Denise looked at them and whispered, "This isn't random." "No." "What are you going to do?" I closed the notebook. "I'm going to check every one of these incidents. Then I'm going to find out which memories are actually wrong." Denise reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I looked at the list again. For months, Vanessa had been asking everyone around me to question what I remembered. Now I was going to do the opposite. I was going to verify it. And if even half of those little incidents had been manipulated, then my missing jewelry wasn't the worst thing my daughter-in-law had stolen. She had been trying to steal my credibility. The next morning, I started with the electric bill. It seemed almost ridiculous that something as ordinary as a utility payment could matter. But Vanessa had used it as evidence that I was becoming forgetful, and Marcus had remembered it well enough to repeat it to me. So I opened my laptop, signed into the account, and pulled up the payment history. There they were. 2 payments. Same amount. 3 days apart. For months I had assumed I'd accidentally paid twice. I clicked the first transaction. Nothing unusual. Then I opened the second. The confirmation page showed a detail I had never noticed before. The payment had been initiated through a different browser session. I stared at the screen. That alone proved nothing. I sometimes used my phone instead of the laptop, so I checked my email. Every online payment generated a confirmation. The first confirmation was there. The second was there too. But the timestamps bothered me. The second payment had been made at 2:16 on a Wednesday afternoon. I opened my calendar. That Wednesday, Denise and I had been at a matinee at the Bird Theater. I remembered it clearly because Denise had complained through half the movie that the air conditioning was trying to preserve us for future generations. I called her. "Do you remember that Wednesday we went to the Bird? Which one? The old Cary Grant movie." "You mean when I almost froze to death?" I smiled. "What time did we go? 2 o'clock. Why are you sure?" "Laverne, I still have the ticket stub, because I'm apparently 87 years old now. Can you send me a picture? What's going on? I'll explain later." 10 minutes later, the photograph arrived. 1:45 p.m. I had been sitting inside a movie theater when the second payment was submitted. Maybe I had scheduled it earlier. Maybe. But I hadn't. I wrote everything down. Next came the doctor's appointment. That one had bothered me since Marcus mentioned it. I remembered writing Tuesday at 10:30 in my paper calendar. Then Vanessa called Monday evening and said, "Don't forget your appointment tomorrow afternoon." I'd corrected her. "It's in the morning." She insisted it had been changed to 2:00. When I arrived at 2:00, the receptionist told me I'd missed the 10:30 appointment. Vanessa later told Marcus I'd confused the time. At the time, I accepted that explanation. Now I called the doctor's office. "I'm trying to confirm something from last month," I told the receptionist. She pulled up my record. "My appointment was originally Tuesday at 10:30, correct?" "Yes. Was it ever changed?" A pause. There was a request to move it. My heart began pounding. Who made the request? I can't identify a person, but it came through the patient portal. When she gave me the date. 2 days before the appointment. Was the change completed? No. There wasn't an afternoon opening, so the original appointment remained. Was there a message sent? Yes. A portal notification. After the call, I logged into my patient account. The notification was there. Request received. Unable to accommodate requested change. Original appointment remains scheduled for 10:30 a.m. I had never seen it. Then I checked the account activity. There had been a login from a device I didn't recognize. My mouth went dry. Months earlier, Vanessa had helped me set up the portal after the clinic changed systems. She had sat beside me at this very kitchen table. I couldn't prove she had logged in. But she had known my password once, and she had known enough about the attempted change to tell me the appointment had moved. I changed the password immediately. Then I changed the password to my email, then my electric company, then my bank. By lunchtime, I had changed 12 passwords. The process made me feel foolish at first, then angry. Why should protecting myself feel like an accusation against someone else? My accounts belonged to me. My privacy belonged to me. I didn't need permission to secure either. After lunch, I went looking for the missing keys. Vanessa had found them months earlier in the narrow drawer beneath the telephone table. I opened that drawer. Take-out menus, spare batteries, a flashlight, old pens, no keys. I tried to remember whether I had ever placed keys there before. Never. My keys always went into a ceramic bowl beside the front door. Harold bought that bowl on a trip to Asheville 20 years ago. He called it my landing strip. Keys land here, purse lands there, glasses land wherever you lose them. I smiled at the memory. Then I stopped. The day my keys disappeared, Vanessa had been in my house. She'd spent nearly an hour organizing. The next morning, I couldn't find them. She arrived and eventually pulled them from a drawer I never used for keys. At the time, I'd thanked her. Now I wondered whether she had known exactly where to look because she had put them there. I sat down. For the first time since Walter called, I felt genuinely afraid. Not because I thought Vanessa might steal something else, because manipulation was harder to defend against than theft. A missing bracelet was evidence. A misplaced key was doubt. And doubt was exactly what she needed. My phone rang. Vanessa. I stared at her name until the call stopped. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. Just checking in. Marcus says you've been stressed. Want me to come over and help with anything? Help. I almost laughed. I typed, no thank you, I'm fine. Her reply came quickly. Are you sure? You seemed a little overwhelmed yesterday? I stared at the word overwhelmed. Another label. Another tiny description that could later become a story. I took a screenshot. Then I added the exchange to my notebook. By 3 o'clock I had filled 6 pages. At 4, Denise came over. I showed her what I'd found. She read silently. When she reached the doctor's appointment, her expression hardened. You need to tell Marcus. Not yet. Why? Because I still can't prove Vanessa did it. Who else knew your portal password? I did. And Vanessa. Denise looked at me. Exactly. Suspicion isn't proof. You have more than suspicion. I have enough to protect myself, not enough to accuse her of every incident. That distinction mattered to me. I wasn't going to become what Vanessa claimed. I was emotional, confused, making accusations without remembering facts. I wanted a record, so Denise helped me create one. We made 3 columns. What happened? What Vanessa said happened? What could be verified? The doctor's appointment was the clearest. My calendar showed 10:30. The clinic showed 10:30. The attempted change had failed. Yet Vanessa had told me it was 200. Then she told Marcus I had forgotten the appointment. Denise tapped the page. She didn't just describe the confusion. She helped create it. I nodded slowly. That was the pattern. Create uncertainty. Then point to the uncertainty as proof. The electric bill was less clear but still troubling. The keys were impossible to prove. The birthday reservation showed Vanessa had confidently given the wrong date and allowed Marcus to believe I was mistaken. 1 incident could be coincidence. 2 could be misunderstanding. But how many coincidences did a woman have to swallow before she was allowed to trust her instincts? That evening, I walked through my house with a locksmith. I told him I wanted the exterior locks changed. All of them, all of them. He didn't ask why. I was grateful for that. When he finished, he handed me 3 new keys. I put one on my keyring, one in the fireproof safe. The third I sealed in an envelope for Marcus. Not Vanessa. Marcus. Then I locked Harold's study. Inside were my financial records, insurance papers, jewelry documents, tax returns, and the notebook I had started keeping. I also enabled two-factor authentication on every account that offered it. By 9 that night, I was exhausted. But for the first time since Walter called, I felt something other than fear. Control. I sat at this kitchen table with a cup of tea and looked at the notebook. Vanessa had spent months making ordinary moments look like evidence that I couldn't manage my life. So I had spent one day doing something very simple, checking. The results were disturbing. At least one of the strongest examples Marcus had been given the doctor's appointment wasn't proof that my memory had failed. It was proof that someone had supplied me with false information, and Vanessa had been the person who supplied it. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Mom, Vanessa tried her key. Did you change the locks? I stared at the message. Vanessa had tried her key. Not Marcus. Vanessa. I typed yes. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Why, I thought about explaining. Then I deleted the paragraph I'd started. Instead, I wrote, because it's my house. His reply didn't come for several minutes. When it finally did, there were only 4 words. Vanessa is really upset. I looked around the kitchen. Harold and I had remodeled together. The cabinets I chose, the curtains I hung, the mortgage I helped pay, the house where I'd raised Marcus. Then I typed, she'll have to be. I placed the phone face down. That was the moment something changed inside me. For months, Vanessa had quietly taught everyone around me to interpret independence as confusion. Now I was going to teach them something else. I could change my passwords. I could change my locks. I could protect my papers. I could verify my own memories. And I didn't need my son, my daughter-in-law, or anyone else to approve those decisions. But as I turned off the kitchen light, one question followed me upstairs. If Vanessa had become this upset, simply because she could no longer enter my house whenever she wanted, what exactly had she still been planning to come inside and do? 2 days after I changed the locks, I invited Marcus and Vanessa to dinner. Not because I wanted peace. Not yet. I wanted information. Denise hated the idea. You're inviting the woman who stole your jewelry back into your house into my dining room. That is still your house. I'll be watching her. Denise folded her arms. What exactly are you planning a conversation? That expression on your face says otherwise. I smiled. I want Vanessa to tell me the story herself. I had learned something during 31 years of office work. When 2 versions of an event conflict, don't immediately reveal everything you know. Ask questions. Let people commit to details. So I called Marcus. Would you and Vanessa come for dinner Friday? He sounded surprised. You want us both there? Yes. Have you decided you're ready to talk about everything? I think we should spend some time together. That wasn't an answer, and Marcus knew it, but he accepted. Friday evening, I prepared pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and peach cobbler. Normal family food. I even set the table with the good dishes. At 6:28, the doorbell rang. That mattered. Vanessa couldn't use her key anymore. I opened the door. Marcus stood holding a bottle of wine. Vanessa was beside him. Her smile looked normal until her eyes met mine. Then something flickered. Hi, Laverne. Come in. She hugged me. I let her. Marcus kissed my cheek. For the first 20 minutes, nobody mentioned jewelry. Marcus talked about work. Vanessa described a house she'd recently shown to a couple relocating from North Carolina. I listened, asked questions, passed the potatoes. Vanessa seemed to relax. That was what I wanted. Halfway through dinner, she complimented the earrings I was wearing. They're pretty. Thank you. Denise gave them to me. Vanessa lifted her wine glass. You've always had beautiful jewelry. There it was. I placed my fork down. My mother loved jewelry. I remember. She especially loved that sapphire brooch. Vanessa's hand paused, only for a second. Then she took another sip. Marcus looked between us. I continued. I've been thinking about it lately. Vanessa set down her glass. I know this whole thing has upset you. I was mostly surprised. I understand. Do you? She gave me that soft expression I'd seen so many times. I never wanted you to feel like I was taking something from you. I nearly admired the sentence, feel like. Not I didn't take anything, feel like I did. So what happened? I asked. Marcus shifted in his chair. Mom. I looked at him. I asked Vanessa. He went quiet. Vanessa dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin. You told me you wanted help selling some things. When a while ago. How long? She shrugged. I don't remember the exact day. That surprises me. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Because apparently, I'm the one who forgets conversations. Marcus whispered, Mom. I ignored him. Vanessa leaned back. I don't want this to become hostile, neither do I. Then why does this feel like an interrogation? Interesting. Marcus had used the same word. I smiled. I'm trying to remember. Help me. The softness in my voice seemed to confuse her. She glanced at Marcus, then back at me. It was maybe 6 weeks ago. Here? Yes. Where in the kitchen? What were we doing? She hesitated. Having coffee. I nodded slowly. And that's when I told you to sell my mother's brooch. You said you were tired of keeping things you never wore. What else did I tell you to sell? Vanessa looked uncomfortable. A few pieces. Which pieces? The bracelet. The pearls. Harold's watch. She hesitated again. Yes. My chest tightened even though I already knew what she would say. Did I give them to you that day? Not all of them. How did you get them, Laverne? Why are you doing this? Because 4 things disappeared from my bedroom. I would like to understand how. Marcus stepped in. Mom, maybe we should slow down. I looked at my son. I am speaking slowly. He leaned back. Vanessa's cheeks had begun to color. You gave me permission to take them, when I already told you. No, you told me we discussed selling them 6 weeks ago. I'm asking when I physically handed them to you. She looked toward Marcus again. I noticed it every time. Whenever she needed reassurance, she looked at him. I don't remember exactly. I nodded. That's understandable. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Then I asked the question I'd been waiting to ask. What date did we have that conversation? Vanessa exhaled. I don't know. You told Marcus you remembered. Marcus frowned. What I looked at him. You said Vanessa told you I signed the paperwork at my kitchen table a few weeks ago. Yes. I turned back to Vanessa. When she stared at me. March 12th. I kept my face neutral. March 12th. Yes. You're sure? Her chin lifted. Yes, Laverne. March 12th. We were sitting right here. For the first time all evening, I felt completely calm. Because March 12th was the one date I had hoped she'd choose. I reached for my water. That's interesting. Vanessa's expression hardened. Why I wasn't in Richmond on March 12th? Silence. Marcus looked at me. What I was in Charleston. Vanessa shook her head immediately. No, you weren't. I was. I remember sitting here with you. Then you were sitting with someone else. Mom, Marcus said. Are you certain? Before the old hurt could rise, I smiled. Yes. Vanessa gave a small laugh. Laverne, this is exactly what I've been trying to explain. There it was. What have you been trying to explain? She turned toward Marcus. See, she genuinely believes she was somewhere else. Marcus didn't answer. Vanessa continued. This is what worries me. She isn't lying. She actually doesn't remember. I pushed my chair back. Vanessa watched as I walked into Harold's study. I returned carrying a folder. I placed it beside my plate. Inside were hotel receipts, restaurant charges, and a photograph Denise had printed for me. I slid the hotel receipt toward Marcus. Charleston, South Carolina. Check-in March 10. Check-out March 14. Then I gave him the photograph. Denise and I stood beside the waterfront. The date was visible in the digital file information printed beneath it. March 12th. Marcus stared at the papers. Vanessa said nothing. I also have credit card charges from Charleston that day, I said. Breakfast at 8:12. A museum ticket at 11:03. Dinner at 6:47. Marcus looked at his wife. Vanessa. Her face changed. Not guilt. Calculation. I must have the date wrong. I nodded. That happens. I meant the week before. Which day I don't know. But a minute ago you specifically remembered March 12th. I was mistaken. I looked at her. So when you remember something incorrectly, that's a mistake. She stiffened. But when I remember something differently from you, it's evidence that my mind is failing. That's not what I said. It is exactly what you've been saying. Marcus put down the photograph. Why did you tell me it was March 12th? Vanessa turned toward him. I got the date wrong. That's all. Marcus frowned. But you said you remembered signing the papers with her. I do. When I don't know Marcus. The irritation in her voice was growing. I could have shown them Walter's copy. I could have told Marcus that the signature resembled an old version of mine. I could have laid the inventory on the table. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to know more before Vanessa understood how much I had. So I softened my voice. Maybe you're right. Both of them looked at me. Vanessa blinked. What? Maybe we've all become confused about dates. I began clearing plates. The conversation was over. Vanessa seemed relieved. Marcus didn't. For the rest of dinner, he was unusually quiet. When I served cobbler, Vanessa tried to restore normal conversation. Marcus barely participated. At 8:30, they prepared to leave. Vanessa hugged me again. I'm glad we talked. So am I. At the door, Marcus lingered. Mom, can I call you tomorrow? Of course. Vanessa was already walking toward their car. Marcus lowered his voice. Do you really have all those receipts? Yes. And Denise was with you the whole trip? Yes. He looked toward Vanessa. Something had changed in his face. It wasn't belief, not yet. But it was doubt. And for the first time, that doubt wasn't aimed at me. After they left, I locked the door. Then I returned to the dining room. Vanessa's wine glass still sat beside her plate. I thought about how confidently she'd said March 12th. Not approximately. Not maybe. She had built a memory that never happened. And when evidence destroyed it, she immediately changed the date. I opened my notebook. Under dinner with Marcus and Vanessa. I wrote Vanessa stated twice that conversation occurred March 12th. I was in Charleston March 10-14. When shown proof, Vanessa changed her claim. Then I added another sentence. Marcus noticed. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A message from him. Mom, I need to ask you something tomorrow. Please don't tell Vanessa I texted you. I read it twice, then placed the phone on the table. For months, Vanessa had been teaching my son to doubt me. Tonight, she had made one mistake. She had tried to turn a lie into proof that I couldn't remember. But this time, I had receipts. And now Marcus was finally beginning to ask himself a question I had been asking for days. What if his mother wasn't the one remembering things wrong? Marcus didn't call the next morning. By noon, I had checked my phone more times than I wanted to admit. His message from the night before was still there. Mom, I need to ask you something tomorrow. Please don't tell Vanessa I texted you. Part of me wanted to call him. I didn't. For months, I had been reacting to what Vanessa said, what Marcus believed, what other people thought I remembered. I was done chasing explanations. Instead, I went upstairs to Harold's study. There was something Walter had said that kept returning to me. Your husband was unusually careful. That sounded exactly like Harold. He kept receipts for appliances we no longer owned and instruction manuals for machines that had broken 15 years earlier. When I teased him, he would say, "You laugh now. One day you'll need the warranty for something we bought during the Clinton administration." After he died, I couldn't bring myself to throw away most of his files. That morning, I was grateful for every one of them. The filing cabinet stood against the far wall. I started with insurance, homeowner policies, life insurance, automobile records. Then I found a folder labeled Personal Property. Inside were appraisal documents. The first page was dated almost 15 years earlier. Walter Hayes's name appeared at the top. My heart quickened. I carried the folder to Harold's desk. There were photographs of jewelry laid against dark velvet. My mother's gold bracelet, my grandmother's pearls, the sapphire brooch, several other pieces. Each photograph had measurements, descriptions, identifying characteristics, and estimated values. Then I found Harold's handwritten notes. Sapphire brooch, Laverne's mother. Pearls, grandmother. Gold bracelet, family piece. Do not dispose without Laverne's approval. I ran my fingers across his handwriting. For a moment, the investigation disappeared. I could see him sitting at that desk wearing his reading glasses too low on his nose. Harold, I whispered. Grief is strange. 4 years after losing someone, you can go days without crying. Then their handwriting can undo you. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. Walter had mentioned Harold documenting provenance, but I hadn't understood how thorough he'd been. There were serial numbers where applicable, repair records, insurance riders, photographs showing clasps, scratches, and markings, enough detail to identify almost every significant piece. Then I reached the valuations. I sat straighter. The sapphire brooch had been appraised years earlier for far more than I expected. The diamonds surrounding the stone were genuine. The gold bracelet was heavier and older than I'd realized. My grandmother's pearls were natural, not inexpensive cultured pearls, as I'd always assumed. I found the most recent insurance update Harold had completed before his death. The combined insured value of the major jewelry pieces was over $100,000. 100,000. I said it aloud because seeing the number didn't feel real. I had worn some of those pieces to church, to anniversary dinners, to Marcus's wedding. I had never thought of them as investments. They were simply my family's things. But Vanessa worked in real estate. She understood value, and she had apparently researched enough to create an inventory of valuables throughout my house. Suddenly, the theft made more financial sense. That realization didn't make it hurt less. It made it worse. My phone finally rang. Marcus. I answered immediately. Hi. Mom. His voice was quiet. Can I come over? Are you alone? Yes. I almost said yes. Then I looked at Harold's folder. Not yet. Why? Because there's something I need to do first. What I'll call you. He was silent. Then he said, Last night bothered me. Good. Mom. I don't mean that cruelly. Sometimes being bothered is how we start asking the right questions. He didn't argue. I'll wait for your call. After we hung up, I searched another drawer. Near the back was a business card. Rebecca Sullivan, attorney at law, estate planning and probate. I remembered her immediately. Rebecca had helped Harold update our estate documents after Marcus married Vanessa. She had also assisted me after Harold died. I hadn't spoken with her in nearly 3 years. I called the number. Her assistant scheduled me for that afternoon, after I briefly explained that the matter involved suspected unauthorized sale of personal property and a questionable signature. At 2:30, I entered Rebecca's office carrying Walter's copies and Harold's appraisal folder. Rebecca looked much as I remembered her dark hair, practical glasses, and an expression that made you feel she had already read the fine print nobody else noticed. Laverne. She hugged me. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. So do I. We sat. Start from the beginning. I did. This time I didn't minimize anything. I told her about Walter's call, the jewelry, Vanessa, the forged authorization, the inventory, the comments about my memory, the doctor's appointment, the changed locks, the dinner. March 12th. Rebecca listened without interrupting. Then she held out her hand. Let me see the document. I gave her Walter's copy. She examined the signature. Did you sign this? No. Did you verbally authorize Vanessa to sell the property? No. Did you give Marcus that authority? No. Does either of them currently hold power of attorney for you? No. Rebecca nodded. Good. The word surprised me. Good. It means the authority question is simpler. She read the document again. Laverne, I want to be careful about terminology until we know exactly who created this and how it was used. But if your signature was knowingly reproduced on a document to obtain authority, you never granted. This is serious. How serious? Potentially much more serious than a family disagreement. I looked down at my hands. Despite everything hearing a lawyer say, it made the situation feel heavier. She's my daughter-in-law. That doesn't give her ownership of your property. I know. I'm saying it because families sometimes confuse access with authority. That sentence struck me. Access with authority. Vanessa had access to my house, access to my papers, access to my son. Somewhere along the way, she'd begun behaving as though that meant authority over me. Rebecca turned to Walter's inventory. Her expression changed as she read. Who prepared this? Vanessa gave it to Walter. Do you recognize all these items? Yes. Are they yours? Most of them. Some belong to Harold, then passed to me. Rebecca looked at me. Has anything besides the jewelry been taken? Not that I've found. Then don't move or sell anything on this list. I wasn't planning to. And don't confront Vanessa with this document yet. Why? Because right now you know what she presented to one appraiser. You don't know whether she approached anyone else. My stomach tightened. I hadn't considered that. Rebecca continued. You need to preserve evidence before people have an opportunity to explain it away, alter records, or make additional claims. I took out my notebook. What should I do? She almost smiled. You've already started. I showed her my timeline. For several minutes she read. This is excellent. Vanessa says my memory is failing. I decided paper has a better memory. Rebecca looked at me over her glasses. Keep doing exactly that. Then I showed her Harold's appraisal records. She examined them carefully. When she reached the updated values, she stopped. Did you know the jewelry was worth this much? No. Do you think Vanessa did? I don't know. Rebecca placed the pages beside Walter's inventory, but she knew enough to identify specific items. Yes. And specific locations. Yes. That concerns me. Why? Because this doesn't look like someone impulsively taking one brooch and trying to sell it. I already knew that. Still, hearing her say it made my chest tighten. Rebecca pointed to the list. This is organized. I looked at the items again. Room by room, object by object. Organized. Rebecca, what do you think she's doing? I don't have enough evidence to answer that yet. The lawyer in her refused speculation. I respected that. What can we do? First, document ownership. Harold has already made that much easier. For the first time that afternoon, I smiled. He always did like paperwork. Rebecca smiled too. Then today, paperwork may be protecting you. She explained that Walter's records could help identify the missing pieces if Vanessa had taken them elsewhere. We would preserve copies of the authorization she had presented. We would document the missing property and any recovered items. And most importantly, I would not sign anything presented by Marcus or Vanessa without independent review. That last instruction hurt. You think my son would trick me? I think you shouldn't make this about trust right now. What should I make it about? Procedure? She leaned forward. Good procedures protect relationships because they remove ambiguity. Harold would have liked Rebecca. On my way home, I stopped at a red light and looked at the folder on the passenger seat. $100,000. The number mattered, but not as much as the photographs. The histories. Harold's handwriting. Vanessa might have seen diamonds, gold, pearls in resale value. I saw my mother fastening a brooch. My grandmother wearing pearls. Harold placing a watch around my wrist. That was the difference between ownership and possession. Vanessa could take an object. She could not decide what it meant. When I reached home, Marcus's car was parked across the street. He stepped out when he saw me. I got out slowly. Mom, we need to talk. I held Harold's folder against my chest. We do. He glanced at it. What's that? Something your father left behind? Marcus's expression changed. I walked toward the house. Then I stopped. Marcus. Yes. Did Vanessa ever tell you what my jewelry was worth? He looked confused. No. Did you ever ask? No. I nodded. Neither did I. How much? I looked at my son. Enough that this isn't about cleaning out an old woman's jewelry box anymore. His face went pale. I unlocked the front door. Before entering, I looked back at him. And before you come inside, understand something. Your father's records prove those pieces are mine. There is no confusion about ownership. There is no forgotten permission. And there is no version of my memory that changes that. Marcus stood silently on the porch. For the first time since this began, I wasn't asking my son to believe me. I had documents, photographs, appraisals, a lawyer. And somewhere out there were 3 pieces of jewelry that still hadn't come home. Now I intended to find them. Marcus followed me into the house, but I didn't show him everything. Not yet. I put Harold's appraisal folder on the kitchen table and opened it to the photographs. Marcus recognized the watch immediately. Dad gave you that for your anniversary, our 25th. He touched the edge of the photograph, and Vanessa took it. It isn't in my jewelry box. His jaw tightened. I turned to the picture of the pearls. Those belonged to my grandmother. Then the bracelet. My mother. Finally, I showed him the insurance valuation. Marcus stared at the total. Over $100,000. That was the insured value of the collection when your father updated the records. He sat back. I had no idea. Neither did I. Does Vanessa? That is one of the questions you should ask your wife. He rubbed both hands over his face. Mom. I know how this looks. I closed the folder. No, Marcus. You know how part of it looks. He looked at me. I wanted to tell him about Rebecca. I wanted to show him Walter's inventory. But Rebecca had told me to preserve information before confronting Vanessa with everything we knew. So I kept my promise. What did you want to ask me? I said. Marcus hesitated. Last night when Vanessa said you signed those papers on March 12th. Yes. She told me that date before we came here. That surprised me. When in the car. Why were you discussing it? Because I asked her when you supposedly gave permission. And she said March 12th. Yes. So it wasn't something she invented at the table under pressure. No. I let that settle. Marcus stared down at his father's handwriting. Mom, I think she lied to me. I could have said I told you so. I didn't. That is something you have to decide. He looked almost angry that I wouldn't decide it for him. What do you think I know she lied about me? The distinction mattered. Marcus stood. I need to talk to her. Before you do listen to me. He stopped. If you confront Vanessa with everything immediately, she may start covering tracks. What tracks? The 3 missing pieces. His expression changed. Right now, the sapphire brooch was safe. The bracelet, pearls, and watch were not. That was my priority. Not winning an argument. Finding what belonged to my family. The next morning, Rebecca called. She had spoken with Walter. Because Harold's records included detailed photographs and identifying information, Walter believed he could discreetly ask several reputable Richmond area jewelers and estate buyers whether matching pieces had recently appeared. Rebecca made the boundaries clear. We aren't accusing anyone publicly, she said. We're identifying your property. I understand. And if we locate anything, don't contact the buyer yourself. I understand. Laverne. Yes, I mean it. Despite myself, I smiled. So did Harold. 3 days passed. They felt like 3 weeks. I went grocery shopping, had lunch with Denise, watered the hydrangeas. Every ordinary activity felt strange because somewhere in the city, pieces of my family history might be sitting beneath glass with price tags attached. Marcus called twice. He and Vanessa were arguing. I didn't ask for details. Then Thursday afternoon, Walter called. We may have found the bracelet. I sat down immediately. We're a jewelry buyer in Henrico County. Did they sell it? Not yet. Relief moved through me so quickly I nearly cried. What happens now? Rebecca is handling communication. Was Vanessa the person who brought it there? Walter paused. The transaction record appears to identify her. There it was. Not a misunderstanding. Not a forgotten conversation. A record. That afternoon, Rebecca showed me a copy of the transaction documentation the business had agreed to preserve. The description matched my mother's bracelet. Walter's old photograph showed the same repaired clasp and tiny scratch near the hinge. Seller Vanessa Underwood. I stared at her name. How much? Rebecca told me. It was less than half the insured value. My stomach turned. Not because of the money. My mother had worn that bracelet for decades. Vanessa had exchanged it for less than the price of a weekend vacation. Can I get it back? We're working on that. Then Rebecca slid another paper toward me. There's more. Walter's inquiries had located a second item. Harold's watch. It had been sold to a different estate jewelry dealer. Already sold onward. My breath caught. To whom we don't know yet. I looked at the photograph. Harold fastening that watch around my wrist remained one of the clearest memories of my marriage. You mean it's gone? Not necessarily. But recovery may be more complicated. I pressed my fingertips against my eyes. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Rebecca waited. Finally I asked, who sold it? She didn't need to answer. Vanessa. Again. 2 separate transactions. 2 separate businesses. 2 records bearing her name. Why different places? Possibly to avoid drawing attention. Possibly because she was shopping for better offers. We don't know. What about the pearls? Nothing yet. I sat very still. Then another question occurred to me. How was she paid? Rebecca pointed to the records. One dealer had issued an electronic payment. The other transaction also documented payment to Vanessa. Can we see where it went? Not into her private banking records without proper legal process. But we can establish that she received the proceeds. I nodded. That was enough for now. I called Marcus. Come over. He arrived 25 minutes later. I didn't offer coffee. I placed copies of the transaction records on the table. Read them. Marcus sat. His eyes moved down the first page. Then the second. His face lost color. She sold them. Yes. He stared at Vanessa's name. How much did she get? I told him. Marcus looked confused. I've never seen that money. I didn't respond. He took out his phone. Maybe it went into our checking account. He opened their banking app. I turned away. Their finances weren't my business. After several minutes, he said quietly, It's not there. Marcus, no. He began scrolling. There's nothing close to those amounts. Don't show me your account. Mom, where did the money go? I don't know. He stood and paced. She told me she was only getting the pieces appraised. She told Walter she was selling them. She told me you wanted to know what they were worth. I said nothing. Marcus looked at me. How long have you known that she sold other pieces since today? And you didn't call me, I just did. No, I mean when Walter first showed you the paperwork. I told you the signature wasn't mine. You didn't tell me everything. I felt anger rise. No, Marcus, I didn't. Why? Because when I told you your wife had taken my jewelry, you asked whether I'd forgotten giving it to her. He stopped pacing. The words landed harder this time. I was trying to be fair. To whom he looked away. I softened my voice. I couldn't spend my energy convincing you while I was trying to protect myself. Marcus sat again. For a long time neither of us spoke. Finally he whispered, She lied about the date. Yes. She lied about the sale. Yes. And the money isn't in our account. That appears to be true. Marcus stared at the table. Then where is it? I didn't know. But the question changed the shape of everything. Until that moment, Marcus could tell himself Vanessa had acted for the family. Maybe she had misunderstood me. Maybe she had gone too far trying to help. But if she had secretly sold my property and hidden the money from her own husband, then Marcus wasn't standing beside the person in control of the situation. How was another person she had kept in the dark? That evening Walter called again. No sign of the pearls yet, but the bracelet had been secured pending resolution. One piece might come home. The watch remained uncertain. After Marcus left, I sat alone in Harold's study. I placed his photograph beside the transaction record showing the sale of his watch. I'm trying, I whispered. I didn't know whether I meant trying to recover his gift or trying to keep our family from collapsing. Maybe both. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. I checked every joint account we have. The money isn't there. A second message followed. Vanessa says she needs to explain something to me tonight. I stared at the screen. For the first time, my son wasn't asking me whether I remembered correctly. He was asking his wife where the money went. I opened my notebook and added 2 lines. Gold bracelet located. Sold by Vanessa. Harold's watch located in transaction records. Sold by Vanessa. Then one more. Money did not go into Marcus and Vanessa's known joint accounts. I closed the notebook. The jewelry had given us a trail. And now that trail was leading somewhere Vanessa clearly hadn't expected Marcus to follow. The next question was no longer whether she had sold my property. We had proof. The question was why a married woman with a successful career had secretly sold her mother-in-law's family jewelry and hidden the money from her own husband. Whatever the answer was, I had a feeling the missing pearls were no longer the biggest secret in Vanessa's life. Marcus didn't call me that night. He called at 6:42 the next morning. I knew something had happened before I answered. Mom. His voice sounded exhausted. What happened? I need to come over. Is Vanessa with you? No, come. 20 minutes later, he was sitting at my kitchen table wearing the same clothes he'd had on the day before. I put coffee in front of him. He didn't touch it. She admitted she sold them. I sat across from him. The bracelet and the watch and the pearls. My heart dropped. Where are they? She won't tell me. Why, she says she doesn't remember which dealer. I almost laughed at the cruelty of that particular excuse. She doesn't remember. Marcus heard it too. His face tightened. I know. I waited. What else did she say? He rubbed his eyes. She said she was going to replace everything. With what? The money. You can't replace my grandmother's pearls with money. I told her that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Marcus took out his phone. There's something else. Of course there was. He placed the phone on the table and opened a screenshot. It showed a bank transfer confirmation. I didn't recognize the institution. What is that A transfer from the dealer that bought the bracelet? To whom? Vanessa. I already knew she received the money. No, Mom. Look at the last 4 digits. I did. Marcus opened their joint account on his phone and showed me the number. They didn't match. She has another account. Yes. You knew. No. The word came out flat. When did you find out? Last night. He leaned back. I asked her where the money went. She kept saying it was complicated. Finally, I told her I had the transaction record. What did she say? That she has a personal account. Since when? She claims about 8 months. Claims. Marcus was beginning to speak differently. A week earlier, Vanessa said things. Now Vanessa claimed them. Trust was changing into verification. Why does she have it? Marcus stared into his untouched coffee. She says she needed something separate because she was embarrassed. About what? He swallowed. Debt. That wasn't what I expected. How much? She won't give me an exact number. Then don't guess. He looked at me. You don't want to know? Of course I want to know. But I'm finished building conclusions out of what Vanessa says. Marcus nodded slowly. That hurt him. But he understood. He told me Vanessa's real estate income had fallen sharply over the past year. I knew the market had been uneven, but Vanessa had never acted as though she was struggling. Quite the opposite. She drove a luxury SUV. She wore designer clothes. She belonged to a private fitness club. Their social media photographs showed restaurants, weekend trips, charity events, and beautifully staged dinners. She said she had to keep up appearances for work, Marcus explained. Meaning, clients expect successful agents to look successful. That sounds expensive. It was. Marcus had discovered several credit cards he hadn't known existed. Vanessa had apparently been making minimum payments while waiting for commissions she expected to receive. Some deals fell through. Others closed for less than anticipated. Instead of reducing expenses, she borrowed more. Why didn't she tell you? She said she was ashamed. That part at least I could understand. Shame makes people hide things. But shame didn't forge my signature. She said the jewelry was temporary. Marcus continued. What does that mean? She planned to use the money to catch up on bills. Then when she closed a large property, she was going to buy everything back. I stared at my son. Marcus. I know. No, listen to what you're saying. She sold unique family pieces to dealers and planned to buy the exact same pieces back later. I know. My grandmother's pearls aren't sitting on a department store shelf. I know. Your father's anniversary watch could already belong to someone else. His eyes dropped. I know. The anger went out of me. He looked devastated. For the first time, I could see that Marcus wasn't simply discovering what Vanessa had done to me. He was discovering what his marriage had become without his knowledge. Did she apologize? I asked. He gave a bitter laugh. She said she was trying to fix everything before anyone found out. That isn't an apology. No. What did she say about my signature? Marcus finally picked up the coffee, then set it down without drinking. She says you did authorize her. I leaned back. Even now. She still says I signed it. Yes. After everything she says you agreed to let her sell some things, then forgot. I felt something inside me go still. The debt explained the money. It did not explain the lies she was still protecting. What about March 12th? She says she confused the date. And the other missing pieces. She says you gave her permission at different times. Convenient. Marcus looked miserable. Mom, I'm not saying I believe her. Then what are you saying? I don't understand why she won't admit that part. I did. Because if Vanessa admitted I had never authorized the sale, then this stopped being a desperate financial decision. It became something much uglier. I opened my notebook. Did you ask her why she's been telling you my memory is failing? Yes, and she said because she genuinely believes it. I stared at him. Do you? Marcus looked directly at me. No. It was the first time he'd answered without hesitation. I wish that made me feel better. It didn't. Why not? He looked confused. What? Why don't you believe it anymore because of everything you've shown me? Exactly. I closed the notebook. You checked. He nodded. That is all I wanted you to do from the beginning. Marcus looked away. A few minutes later, Rebecca called. I stepped into the hallway to speak privately. She had received additional documentation from the jewelry buyer. The payment record confirmed Vanessa had directed proceeds from the bracelet into an account solely associated with her. Rebecca was careful. We know where that transaction went. We don't know the full activity of the account, and we should not speculate. I won't. But it establishes something important. What? The proceeds were not automatically going to a family account shared with Marcus. When I returned to the kitchen, Marcus was standing by the window. Was that the lawyer? He asked. I hadn't told him Rebecca was involved. Yes. His eyes widened. You hired a lawyer? I consulted one. Mom, are you going to the police? I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Vanessa could... He stopped. Could what? He looked at me. Get into serious trouble. I felt a sadness so deep it almost resembled calm. Marcus' serious trouble didn't begin when I called a lawyer. He said nothing. It began when your wife took property that wasn't hers. I know. It continued when she sold it. I know. And when she used my signature. He closed his eyes. I know. I reached across the table. I'm not trying to destroy your wife. His eyes opened. But I'm also not going to protect her from the consequences of what she did to me. He nodded. That afternoon after Marcus left, I called Denise. When I told her about Vanessa's debt, she was silent. Finally, she said, so that's why she stole the jewelry. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. Because it explains why she needed money. I looked at Walter's inventory lying on my desk. It doesn't explain why she needed Marcus to think I was losing my mind. Denise became quiet again. That was the question. If Vanessa had panicked over debt and stolen jewelry, that was terrible but simple. But the months of stories about my memory had started before Walter called, before I knew anything was missing. And the inventory included far more property than the 4 pieces she had taken. That evening, Marcus texted me again. Vanessa gave me a rough number. She says the debt is around $46,000. $46,000. Enough to frighten someone. Enough to create desperation. But the insured value of my jewelry collection exceeded twice that. Then another message arrived. She says she was going to pay everything back after 2 closings this summer. I didn't respond. A third message followed. Mom, I don't understand the paperwork. Neither did I. Not yet. The next morning, I met Rebecca again. She had Walter's inventory spread across her conference table. She had highlighted several sections. Laverne, I want to ask you something. All right. Did Vanessa ever discuss helping Marcus take over management of your finances? No. Did Marcus? No. Did anyone suggest adding him to your bank accounts? No. Rebecca looked back at the document. What is it? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slid the inventory toward me. Look at the way this is organized. I had already seen it dozens of times. Jewelry, silver, artwork, collectibles, locations, estimated values. What am I looking for? Not the items. Rebecca tapped the headings. The categories. I looked closer. She continued. This isn't just a shopping list of valuable things. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. What is it? Rebecca folded her hands. I want to review a few things before I tell you what I think. I don't want to frighten you based on an incomplete interpretation. Rebecca, I passed frightened several days ago. She almost smiled. Then her expression became serious again. The debt may explain why Vanessa needed cash. She tapped the inventory. But I agree with you. It doesn't explain this. I drove home with that sentence repeating in my head. Vanessa had a secret account, secret debt. She had secretly sold my jewelry. Those things connected. But somewhere underneath them was another plan. One that required an inventory of my property, a copied signature, and months of carefully convincing my son that I could no longer trust my own memory. For the first time, I wondered whether Vanessa had ever intended to stop after the jewelry, and deep down I already knew the answer. Rebecca called me the following afternoon. Laverne, can you come in tomorrow morning? Her tone told me this wasn't something she wanted to explain over the phone. I'll be there. Bring your notebook. That night, I barely touched dinner. The inventory stayed on my mind. Jewelry, silver, paintings, collectibles, locations, estimated values. I had looked at that list so many times that I could almost see it with my eyes closed. Until Rebecca pointed out the categories, I'd viewed it as exactly what it appeared to be, a list of things Vanessa might want to sell. But now I wasn't sure. At 9 the next morning, I sat across from Rebecca. She had 3 documents arranged neatly on the conference table. Walter's inventory, the false authorization, and a blank form I didn't recognize. What's that? A standard asset inventory format, sometimes used when someone is helping organize another person's property. I looked between the documents. Rebecca continued. I want to be precise. This does not prove Vanessa intended to pursue any particular legal action. All right. But the way her list is organized concerns me. Why? Because it isn't simply a list of things to sell. She placed the blank form beside Vanessa's inventory. The similarities became obvious. Category, description, location, estimated value, ownership, condition. My stomach tightened. What kind of is that? An inventory structure that could be useful in estate administration, financial planning, downsizing, or managing assets for someone who isn't handling everything themselves. There it was. Someone who isn't handling everything themselves. I sat back. So she was inventorying my life. Your property. Same difference when it's happening inside my house. Rebecca nodded. I looked at the list again. Why would she need this if she only wanted money for her debts? She wouldn't necessarily. Then what do you think? Rebecca folded her hands. I think the jewelry may have served 2 purposes. I waited. First, immediate cash. That part we know. Second, it may have tested how much access she had and how quickly you would notice property disappearing. I felt cold. A test, possibly. The word was careful. The idea was terrifying. I thought about my mother's bracelet, my grandmother's pearls, Harold's watch. Vanessa had chosen pieces I didn't wear every day, things I might not check for weeks, maybe months. If Walter hadn't called, I stopped. Rebecca finished the thought. How long before you checked the jewelry box? I didn't know. The brooch might have been missing for weeks before I noticed. The bracelet even longer. That realization made my stomach turn. She expected me not to notice, or expected there to be an explanation available if you did. My memory, of course. I stared at Rebecca. If I didn't notice, she could take more. Rebecca said nothing. If I did notice, she could say, I forgot giving permission. Again, Rebecca said nothing. She didn't have to. The structure was becoming clear. The jewelry wasn't simply stolen property. It was a trial run. I stood and walked toward the window. Below us, people moved along the sidewalk, carrying coffee briefcases, shopping bags. Normal lives. I wondered how many older women had experienced something similar and been told they were confused when they questioned it. How does Marcus fit into this? Rebecca turned slightly in her chair. What do you mean Vanessa didn't just tell Walter my memory was failing? She's been telling Marcus for months. Yes. Why? Rebecca hesitated. I can't tell you what Vanessa intended. I know. But if someone wanted greater involvement in another person's finances, having the closest family member believe that person needed help would certainly make the process easier. My son. My only child. I suddenly understood why Vanessa hadn't needed Marcus to steal anything. She needed him to believe. Once Marcus believed I was declining, every future intrusion could be framed as protection. Mom shouldn't be managing all these accounts alone. Mom shouldn't have this much valuable property sitting around. Mom needs help with paperwork. Mom should let us handle things. Mom probably forgot. Each sentence sounded caring. Together they could become a cage. My eyes filled with tears. Rebecca noticed. Take your time. I trusted her. I know. I gave her a key to my house. I know. I let her organize my bedroom. My voice cracked. She stood beside me while I talked about my mother's jewelry. Rebecca slid a box of tissues toward me. I took one. What kind of person listens to the story of someone's dead mother and then calculates what her bracelet is worth? Rebecca didn't answer. There wasn't a legal answer for that. After a moment, I sat again. Show me everything. Rebecca pointed to the false authorization. This document gave Vanessa purported authority over specified personal property. Then the inventory. This identifies significantly more property than she actually brought to Walter. And the memory story, that isn't a document. No, it's something better. Rebecca looked at me. Better for her. I wiped my eyes. A document can be checked. A story spreads. Rebecca's expression changed slightly. I continued. She didn't need paperwork saying I was confused if she could make Marcus believe it. That was when the full shape of it finally became visible. Vanessa had been building two things at once: a record of my property and a story about me. The first said what I owned. The second explained why someone else should eventually control it. I felt sick. Rebecca must have seen the realization on my face. Laverne remembers something important. What none of this changes your legal ownership, I know. And nobody gets to declare you incapable simply because a family member says you're forgetful. I know that too. But emotionally, it wasn't the law that frightened me. It was how close Vanessa had come to making her version of me believable. Marcus had already started questioning me. What if Walter hadn't called? What if another year had passed? What if every ordinary mistake I made became another story? At 75, would Marcus remember his mother as capable, or would he remember years of Vanessa whispering that something was wrong? My phone rang. Marcus. I stepped into the hallway. Hi. Mom, I found something. His voice was tense. What I went through old messages between Vanessa and me. My pulse quickened. What did you find? She's been talking about your memory longer than I realized. How long? Almost 9 months. 9 months. Long before the jewelry disappeared. What did she say? Marcus hesitated. Little things at first. Read them. He went quiet. Marcus. Finally he began. Mom seemed confused about the dinner reservation tonight. Another. Your mom asked me the same question twice today. I don't want to worry you, but maybe we should start paying attention. Another. Laverne couldn't find her keys again. I hate seeing her struggle. Then one that made my stomach drop. At some point, we may need to help your mom simplify her finances before things become too much for her. I closed my eyes. When was that? 7 months ago. Before the jewelry. Before Walter. Before I knew anything was wrong. What did you say? Marcus sounded ashamed. I said we'd talk about it if things got worse. I leaned against the wall. There it was. Vanessa had already planted the possibility. Not stealing my money, helping me manage it. What else? Marcus hesitated. There was one from about 5 months ago. Read it. He did. Your mom has so much valuable stuff in that house. If her memory really is slipping, someone should probably make an inventory someday, so nothing disappears. For a second, I couldn't breathe. An inventory. 5 months ago. I looked through the glass wall of Rebecca's conference room. The document was sitting on the table. Mom, I'm here. Did she ever ask you to make an inventory? No. Did you ever ask her no? Marcus went silent. Then he whispered, "Oh God." I understood. I returned to the conference room and put the phone on speaker. Marcus, Rebecca is here. The lawyer. Yes. Okay. Read that last message again. He did. Rebecca wrote something down. Then she asked Marcus, do not delete those messages. Preserve the entire conversation, including dates and surrounding context. I won't. After we ended the call, Rebecca looked at me. That matters, because she mentioned an inventory, because it helps establish chronology. Months before the jewelry sale, Vanessa was already discussing my valuable possessions, my memory, and the need to document what I owned. I looked at the inventory again. Suddenly, the title of the story I had been living changed. This wasn't my daughter-in-law stole my jewelry because she was desperate for money. It was my daughter-in-law spent months preparing my son to believe I couldn't manage my own life. The jewelry was simply the first place she'd turned that preparation into action. That afternoon, Marcus came to my house alone. He looked 10 years older. I showed him the inventory. He read every page. When he reached the locations column, he stopped. She knew where everything was. Yes. Because you let her help organize. Yes. His eyes filled. Mom, I gave her the key. No. He looked at me. I did. I gave her the key, but I asked you to. That doesn't make this your fault. I believed her. That part is yours. He flinched. I didn't soften it. You didn't steal from me, Marcus. But you stopped checking whether what she said about me was true. He nodded. I know. She needed you to believe I was becoming incapable. His face crumpled slightly. Why I placed the inventory on the table between us. Because if you believed I needed help, she wouldn't have to fight me for control. Marcus stared at the pages. I continued quietly. The jewelry wasn't the whole plan. He looked up. No. It was the first time we had both said it. The same truth. At the same time. Vanessa's debt explained why she needed money quickly. But it didn't explain 9 months of messages. It didn't explain the manipulated incidents. It didn't explain the inventory. It didn't explain why she had carefully taught my son to interpret my independence as decline. The jewelry had been valuable. But what Vanessa had really been testing was something worth far more. How easily she could take something from me and convince everyone that I had agreed to give it away. And if Walter hadn't made one phone call, she might have learned exactly what she wanted to know. That no one would stop her. Marcus came back the next morning, alone. He didn't call first. At 9:15, the doorbell rang, and when I opened it, my son was standing on the porch holding 2 cups of coffee and looking as though he hadn't slept. For years, Marcus had walked into my house without hesitation. That morning, he waited for me to invite him inside. It was a small thing, but I noticed. Come in. He handed me one of the cups. 2 creams. No sugar. You remembered. His face tightened. I remember a lot of things, Mom. We sat at the kitchen table. Marcus wrapped both hands around his coffee but didn't drink. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me. Mom. What actually happened? I felt something inside me shift. It was the first time since Walter called that Marcus had asked the right question. Not, are you sure? Not, could you have forgotten? Not what did Vanessa say? What actually happened? I went to Harold's study and returned with my notebook and 3 folders. I placed them on the table. If you want the truth, you're going to see all of it. I do. I opened the first folder. Walter's records. This is the sapphire brooch. Marcus studied the old appraisal photograph. Dad arranged this. Yes. I explained how Harold had taken the jewelry to Walter years earlier. How he'd documented the ownership. How he'd specifically required my authorization before the brooch could be transferred or sold. Then I showed Marcus the authorization Vanessa had presented. He stared at the signature. That looks like yours. It used to. What do you mean I retrieved a recent document bearing my current signature and placed it beside the authorization? Marcus compared them. The difference was obvious. My hand changed after the arthritis got worse, I said. Vanessa's document uses the way I signed years ago. Marcus looked up. Where would she get the old signature? You remember the insurance documents you scanned after your basement flooded? His face changed. Yes. There were copies of my old paperwork in those files. Marcus stared at the false authorization. She copied it. That is what I believe. He swallowed. Then I showed him Walter's written confirmation of Vanessa's visit, the date, the brooch, the claim that I had authorized the sale, the statement that I had been forgetting decisions. Marcus read every line. When he finished, he didn't defend her. He simply whispered, "Keep going." So I did. I opened my notebook. The electric bill, the doctor's appointment, the missing keys, the birthday reservation, the silver candlesticks. One by one, I showed him the difference between what happened and what Vanessa had later said happened. The doctor's appointment stopped him. You called the clinic, yes, and it was always at 10:30, yes. But Vanessa told me you showed up at 2 because you forgot the time. She told me it had been changed to 2. Marcus stared at the page. I showed him the portal activity. There was an attempted change, but the office couldn't accommodate it. My original appointment remained. Who requested the change? I can't prove who. Marcus looked at me. But Vanessa knew your password. She had helped me set up the portal. He leaned back. Oh God. Don't fill in what we can't prove. He looked surprised. After everything she's done, you're still giving her that no. I closed the page. I'm giving myself the discipline to separate what I know from what I suspect. Marcus looked down. I didn't do that for you. The words were quiet. No. He flinched. But I wasn't going to rescue him from the truth. Next came the Charleston receipts. I showed him the hotel reservation, the photograph, the credit card charges. March 12th, he whispered. Yes. She told me that date before dinner. I know. She was so certain. So was I. Marcus closed his eyes. Then I placed the transaction records in front of him. My mother's bracelet, Harold's watch, Vanessa's name as seller, payments directed to her. Marcus had already seen some of it, but this time he studied everything as part of one continuous record. Then came the inventory. He stared at the locations. Dining room cabinet. Yes. Study desk. Yes. Upstairs bedroom. Yes. He looked sick. She went through your whole house. She helped me organize my whole house. Marcus pushed the papers away. I brought her here. You didn't steal anything. I encouraged you to trust her. Yes. The word hurt him. It hurt me too. But healing built on softened truth wasn't healing. It was another kind of lie. Finally, I showed him the timeline of Vanessa's comments about my memory. Marcus added the messages from his phone. 9 months of them. Concern. Suggestions. Observations. Little warnings. Your mom seems confused. Maybe we should keep an eye on things. She misplaced something again. We may need to help her simplify her finances. Someone should make an inventory. Marcus stared at the table covered in evidence. Then he began crying. Not dramatically. My 42-year-old son simply lowered his head and covered his eyes. I hadn't seen him cry since Harold's funeral. My instinct was to go to him, to put my arms around him, to say it was all right. But it wasn't. So I waited. Finally, he said, I believed her. I know. I believed her instead of you. You believed what you heard repeatedly. That doesn't make it better. No. He wiped his face. I thought I was protecting you. From what he looked at me. From being embarrassed. I remembered our first phone conversation. I didn't want to embarrass you. You know what embarrassed me, Marcus? He shook his head. Having my own son ask whether I remembered giving away my mother's jewelry. His eyes filled again. Mom, no. You need to hear this. He nodded. The bracelet hurt. The pearls hurt. Your father's watch hurt. My voice trembled. But none of them hurt as much as hearing you question whether I could trust my own mind. I'm sorry. I know. No, Mom. I am sorry. He reached toward me but stopped before touching my hand. I should have asked you. Yes, I should have checked. Yes. I should never have let Vanessa make me think every little mistake meant something was wrong with you. I looked at him. You wanted peace in your marriage. He stared at me. You've always hated conflict. Dad used to say that. He was right. Marcus gave a weak laugh. He usually was. Not always. That almost made us both smile. Then Marcus became serious. I've been thinking about why I didn't question Vanessa sooner. I waited. She'd tell me something small about you. Nothing big enough to confront you about. And every time I told myself I'd watch. Watch me. Yes. Instead of talking to me. He nodded. Then once I started watching, I noticed normal things. I repeated a story. You forgot where you put something. I mixed up a name. And every time it happened, I thought Vanessa had been right. There it was. The mechanism. Vanessa didn't have to prove I was declining. She only had to tell Marcus what to look for. Once he began looking, ordinary human mistakes became evidence. You were waiting for me to fail, I said. His face crumpled. I didn't realize that. But that's what happened. Yes. Silence filled the kitchen. Finally, Marcus asked, "Can you forgive me?" I looked at my son. There are questions mothers are expected to answer immediately. Of course, always. You're my child. But I was tired of saying things simply because they made other people comfortable. I don't know yet. He looked stunned. Not angry, just hurt. I continued. I love you. I love you too. But love and trust aren't the same thing. He nodded slowly. You're my son. That won't change. I touched the notebook. But you allowed someone else's version of me to become more believable than my own voice. I know. That doesn't disappear because you apologized. What can I do? Stop asking me what you can say. He frowned. What you keep looking for the right words. I pushed the folders toward him. I don't need words. Then what actions? He waited. Don't defend me because I'm your mother. Don't defend Vanessa because she's your wife. Follow the facts wherever they lead. Marcus looked at the evidence. And if they destroy my marriage, that isn't a decision I'm going to make for you. But what would you do? I shook my head. No. Mom, no. That's exactly the point. He became quiet. I've spent days fighting to prove that I have the right to make decisions about my own life. I'm not going to turn around and make yours. He nodded. I understand. Do you? I think I'm starting to. Before he left, I handed him the sealed envelope containing the spare key to my new locks. He stared at it. You're giving me a key one. His eyes met mine. Vanessa doesn't get a copy. She won't. And you don't come in without calling unless there's an emergency. I understand. This isn't everything going back to normal. I know. It means I'm giving you one small piece of trust. Marcus held the envelope carefully. I won't waste it. I watched him walk to his car. For the first time in days, I felt something close to hope. Not because my son had chosen me over his wife. I didn't want to be chosen. I wanted to be heard. There was a difference. That evening, Marcus sent one message. I saved copies of all Vanessa's texts about your memory. Rebecca can have them whenever she needs them. I read it twice. Then I wrote one sentence in my notebook. Marcus stopped arguing with the evidence. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't restoration. But it was a beginning. The jewelry might eventually be recovered. Money could possibly be repaid. Documents could be corrected. But trust was different. Trust returned one decision at a time. And for the first time since Walter's call, my son had made one that belonged entirely to him. Rebecca scheduled the meeting for Thursday afternoon. Her office. Neutral ground. That mattered to me. I didn't want Vanessa inside my house, and I didn't want to sit in Marcus's home surrounded by photographs of a marriage that was now coming apart. Rebecca had been clear when she called. This is not a trial, Laverne. I know. We're documenting your position, presenting the records, and giving Vanessa an opportunity to respond. I understand. And let me do most of the talking. That part was harder. I'll try. Rebecca laughed softly. I'll accept that. I arrived 20 minutes early. On the conference table were 4 folders, one for each of us. The forged authorization was inside. So were Walter's records, photographs of the jewelry transaction documents, and the inventory Vanessa had presented. Rebecca had also prepared a written demand regarding the return of any property still in Vanessa's possession. I touched the folder. You think she'll come? She confirmed. Did she know Marcus would be here? Yes. That surprised me. Marcus and Vanessa had barely spoken for several days, except about practical matters. He was staying at a hotel. I hadn't asked him to leave her. I hadn't even suggested it. That was his marriage, his decision. At exactly 2 o'clock, Marcus entered. He kissed my cheek. Mom. Marcus. He sat beside me. At 2:07, Vanessa arrived. Alone. She looked immaculate. Cream-colored coat, perfect hair, leather handbag. For one strange moment, I remembered the first time Marcus brought her home. She had been 28 and nervous carrying a pie she'd baked herself. I had liked her immediately. That memory hurt. Vanessa looked at Marcus, then at me. Laverne. Vanessa. Rebecca invited everyone to sit. No one touched the water. Rebecca began. We're here to address the personal property belonging to Mrs. Underwood that was removed and in several cases sold without authorization. Vanessa immediately interrupted. I need to correct that. Rebecca looked at her. You'll have an opportunity. I did have authorization. There it was. Still. After everything, she was still holding on to that story. Rebecca opened the first folder. Then let's begin with the authorization you presented to Walter Hayes. She slid a copy toward Vanessa. Do you recognize this? Yes. You provided it, yes. And your position is that Laverne signed it. Vanessa looked directly at me. She did. I felt Marcus shift beside me. Rebecca remained calm. When I don't remember the exact date. Of course she didn't. Rebecca nodded. Where Laverne's kitchen? What was discussed? She told me she wanted help getting rid of things she no longer used. I watched Vanessa carefully. Her voice was steady. If I hadn't lived through the previous weeks, I might have believed her. Rebecca placed another document beside it. This is an example of Mrs. Underwood's current signature. Vanessa glanced at it. Rebecca continued. The signature on your authorization resembles an older form of Mrs. Underwood's signature documented on records from years ago. Vanessa shrugged. People sign differently. They do. Rebecca didn't accuse. She simply moved on. Mrs. Underwood denied signing the authorization. Vanessa looked at Marcus. I told you she wouldn't remember. Marcus's jaw tightened. Rebecca said, We're not discussing memory yet. But that's the whole problem. Vanessa turned toward me. Laverne. I never wanted this to become ugly. I almost admired the nerve of it. You sold my mother's bracelet. You told me I could. My grandmother's pearls. You weren't wearing them. That wasn't the question. Rebecca raised one hand, slightly reminding me of our agreement. I leaned back. She placed Walter's written statement on the table. Mr. Hayes records that when he attempted to contact Mrs. Underwood directly, you discouraged him from doing so. Vanessa shook her head. I didn't discourage him. He states you said direct confirmation could upset her because she sometimes forgot decisions. I was concerned about her. Then why not involve Marcus? Vanessa glanced toward him. I didn't want to put more stress on him. Marcus finally spoke. You told me Mom only wanted the pieces appraised. Vanessa's expression changed. I told you she wanted help with them. No. You told me appraisal. I may have used that word. You sold them. I was trying to fix a financial situation. That wasn't your decision to make. Vanessa's face hardened. Marcus, you knew I was struggling. I knew business was slow. I didn't know you were $46,000 in debt. She looked away. Rebecca redirected the meeting. Financial pressure may explain motive. It does not establish permission. Then she placed the transaction records on the table. My mother's bracelet, Harold's watch, Vanessa's name, payment records. The room became very quiet. Rebecca asked, Where are the pearl earrings? Vanessa folded her arms. I don't know. You previously acknowledged selling them. I sold them. I don't remember where. The words made my stomach twist. My grandmother's pearls reduced to something she couldn't remember. Rebecca didn't react emotionally. We'll address recovery separately. Then she opened the inventory. This time, Vanessa's composure changed, only slightly. But I saw it. Rebecca slid the pages across. Why did you prepare this? Vanessa looked down. I was helping Laverne organize. Why include estimated values? Because she had too much stuff. Why include locations? So we knew where things were. We. Vanessa paused. The family. Marcus leaned forward. I never saw this. Vanessa looked at him. You knew we were worried about her. No. I knew you were worried about her. Because she was forgetting things. Marcus shook his head. Stop. Vanessa blinked. Marcus, no. Every time you get cornered, you go back to Mom's memory. Because it's relevant. Then explain March 12th. Vanessa's face tightened. I already did. You told me before dinner that Mom signed the papers on March 12th. I confused the date. You didn't sound confused. People make mistakes. Marcus stared at her. That is exactly what Mom has been saying. Vanessa went silent. Marcus continued. When you make a mistake, it's a mistake. When Mom makes one, it's evidence. That's unfair. No. His voice was calm. You spent 9 months teaching me to see her that way. Vanessa looked genuinely wounded. I was trying to protect your mother. From what? From herself. The words landed like a slap. I felt Marcus tense. Rebecca remained still. Vanessa looked at me. You don't see it, Laverne. That's part of the problem. You live alone in that big house. You have valuable things everywhere. You forget appointments. You lose things. I couldn't remain silent. So you protected me by taking them first. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I continued. You were worried my valuables might disappear, so you made sure they disappeared into a jewelry dealer. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened. You agreed. No. Yes, you did. No. Vanessa's voice rose. You don't remember. The room went silent. There it was. Not concern anymore. Not softness. The weapon underneath all of it. You don't remember. I looked at her. I remember my mother's bracelet. Vanessa said nothing. I remember her wearing it every Sunday. I touched the folder. I remember my grandmother's pearls. I remember sitting at her dressing table when I was 8 years old, while she let me try them on. My voice remained steady. I remember Harold giving me that watch on our 25th anniversary. Marcus lowered his eyes. I remember exactly where each piece was stored. I looked directly at Vanessa. And I remember never giving you permission to sell any of them. Vanessa shook her head. Remembering stories doesn't mean enough. It was Marcus, not loud, but final. Vanessa turned toward him. He looked at his wife. I don't believe you anymore. Her face changed. Marcus, I wanted to. He swallowed. I wanted there to be an explanation that didn't mean my wife had lied to me and stolen from my mother. I didn't steal. You sold property that wasn't yours. Your mother agreed. No, you weren't there. Neither was she on March 12th. Vanessa stared at him. Marcus continued. I checked your messages. I checked the dates. I checked the accounts. I checked the transaction records. His voice broke slightly. For once I actually checked. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. So you're choosing her? Marcus shook his head. No. He looked at me briefly, then back at Vanessa. That's the part I finally understand. This isn't about choosing my mother over my wife. He tapped the documents. I'm choosing what can be proven over what you keep telling me to believe. Vanessa began crying. A few weeks earlier that might have moved me. Now I felt only sadness. Not satisfaction. Not victory. Sadness for what she'd done. For what Marcus had lost. For what our family could have been. Rebecca waited until the room settled. Then she spoke. Mrs. Underwood's position is straightforward. She did not authorize these sales. She requires the return of all property, still recoverable reimbursement for property that cannot be recovered and written. Acknowledgement that you have no authority to manage, transfer, sell, or represent her interests regarding any assets. Vanessa wiped her eyes. And if I don't, Rebecca's expression remained neutral. Then Mrs. Underwood will consider the legal options available to her. Vanessa looked at me. For the first time since the meeting began, there was no confidence in her face. You'd really do that to me? I almost couldn't believe the question. To you. You know what this could do to my career. I thought of Walter's phone call, my empty jewelry box, my son asking whether I'd forgotten. Then I answered quietly, Vanessa, I didn't create this situation. She looked away. You did. Rebecca slid the written demand toward her. You don't need to sign anything today. Take this to your own attorney if you wish. Vanessa gathered her handbag. At the door she stopped. She looked at Marcus. He didn't move. Then she looked at me. I expected anger. Instead, she seemed frightened. For months she'd been protected by one assumption, that if I challenged her, Marcus would doubt me. That protection was gone. After she left, Marcus sat silently. Rebecca began organizing the folders. I looked down at my hands. I had imagined this moment many times. I thought I would feel triumphant. I didn't. Truth doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it simply feels like the moment the lying finally stops. Marcus reached across the table. This time I let him take my hand. What happens now? He asked. I looked at the closed door Vanessa had just walked through. Now I squeezed my son's fingers once. Now she gets to make her own choices. And us, I looked at him. We live with ours. For months, Vanessa had controlled the story by making everyone question the woman telling the truth. That afternoon she lost that control. Not because I shouted louder. Not because Marcus chose his mother. Not because Rebecca threatened her. She lost it because every time she changed her story, the evidence stayed exactly where it was. And for the first time, everyone in the room was finally looking at it. Vanessa did not sign Rebecca's acknowledgement that day. I hadn't expected her to. Rebecca had specifically told her to take the documents to her own attorney, and 3 days later, an attorney representing Vanessa contacted Rebecca. That was when the situation changed. Not emotionally, practically. For weeks I had been trying to understand what happened. Now I knew. The question became what I was willing to do about it. Rebecca called me Monday morning. Vanessa is willing to discuss restitution. I was standing in my kitchen cutting an apple. Restitution. Yes, that's a very clean word. Legal language often is. I set down the knife. What does she want? To resolve this without litigation if possible. I almost laughed. For months, Vanessa had made decisions about my belongings without asking me. Now that consequences had arrived, she wanted cooperation. What are my options? Rebecca explained them carefully. The bracelet had been located and could be returned once the documentation was completed. Harold's watch had been sold onward, but the dealer was attempting to contact the buyer. The pearls remained missing. Vanessa would be required to reimburse me for anything that could not be recovered. There would also be a written acknowledgement that she had no authority to sell, transfer, inventory, manage, or represent herself as acting on my behalf regarding my property or finances. What happens if she refuses? We discuss the next step. I looked toward the hallway leading to Harold's study. 3 weeks earlier, I might have wanted punishment. Now I wanted something different. My life back. I don't want to destroy her. Rebecca was silent for a moment. I know, but I won't pretend this didn't happen. You shouldn't. I want my property returned. Yes. I want repayment for anything she made impossible to recover. Yes. And I want it in writing that she has no authority over anything belonging to me. I'll make that clear. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table. Consequences. That word had become important to me. There is a difference between revenge and consequences. Revenge says, you hurt me, so I want you to hurt. Consequences say, you made a choice and I will no longer protect you from what follows. I chose consequences. The bracelet came home first. Walter brought it personally. When he opened the velvet case, I recognized the tiny scratch immediately. For several seconds, I couldn't touch it. Would you like me to leave you alone? He asked. No. I lifted the bracelet. It felt heavier than I remembered. My mother used to wear it with a navy Sunday dress. She would sit at her vanity, fasten it around her wrist, then ask me whether the clasp was secure. I had been a little girl then. Now I was 67, standing in my own living room, holding the same bracelet after someone I'd trusted had sold it. Thank you, I told Walter. I'm glad one made it back. One. The word hurt, but it was also hope. A week later, we received news about Harold's watch. The buyer agreed to return it after learning the circumstances surrounding the sale provided the transaction was unwound properly. I cried when Rebecca told me. Not polite tears. I sat in Harold's study and sobbed. That watch was the last expensive gift my husband ever bought me. The night he gave it to me, I'd scolded him for spending money we didn't have. He laughed and said, "Laverne, someday you're going to learn that not every good decision belongs in a budget." 25 years. That watch represented 25 years of arguments, children, mortgages, illnesses, Christmas mornings, bad vacations, good dinners, and ordinary Tuesdays. Vanessa had seen gold. I saw my marriage. When the watch returned, I didn't put it back in the jewelry box. I placed it in the safe beside the sapphire brooch. The pearls were different. They could not be located. Vanessa eventually identified the type of buyer she'd sold them to, but the records were incomplete, and the trail ended. Rebecca didn't promise recovery. Neither did Walter. For several days I struggled with that. Those pearls had belonged to my grandmother. When I was 8, she'd let me sit at her dressing table and wear them. "They're too grown up for you," she'd said. I refused to take them off. She laughed and called me Miss Hollywood. That memory was still mine. The pearls were not. Eventually, through her attorney, Vanessa agreed to reimburse their documented value. When Rebecca told me the amount, I felt almost insulted. Not because it was too low, because a number existed at all. "How do you put a price on your grandmother?" I asked. "You don't," Rebecca said. "The reimbursement is for the property, not the memory." That helped. A little. The written agreement came next. Vanessa acknowledged that she held no authority to act for me regarding my property, financial accounts, personal possessions, estate planning, or living arrangements. She agreed not to represent otherwise to any third party. She agreed to return any remaining property belonging to me. She agreed to reimburse losses connected to the items that could not be recovered. Rebecca reviewed every line with me. "Are you comfortable with this?" I read the document again. "Yes, you understand this doesn't require you to forgive her." "I know. And it doesn't require you to resume a relationship." "I know." I signed. This time the signature was mine. That mattered more than I expected. A few days later, Marcus came over. He looked tired but calmer. Vanessa and I separated. I didn't react immediately. "I'm sorry." He seemed surprised. "You are? I'm sorry you're hurting." He sat across from me. "I thought you might be relieved." "Marcus, I never wanted your marriage to fail." "I know. I wanted your wife to stop stealing from me." A sad laugh escaped him. "When you put it that way, those are two different things." He nodded. He told me he'd learned more about Vanessa's finances, more credit cards, more debt, more lies about commissions. Nothing that changed what she had done to me, but enough to convince Marcus that the jewelry wasn't an isolated lapse in judgment. "I'm not saying we're definitely divorcing," he said. "You don't owe me an answer. I feel like I do. You don't. But after what she did, I held up my hand. Your marriage belongs to you." Marcus became quiet. "I won't tell you to stay," I continued. "And I won't tell you to leave." "What would Dad say?" I smiled. "Your father would probably talk for 40 minutes, and somehow still tell you to decide for yourself." Marcus laughed. Then his eyes filled. "I miss him." "So do I." We sat quietly for a while. Then Marcus said, "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to prove yourself." I looked at him. "You've already apologized." "I know. Then don't keep apologizing. What should I do?" "Be different." He nodded. That was what I needed. Not guilt. Change. Over the next month, Marcus did small things differently. He called before coming over. He didn't ask whether I'd remembered appointments. He didn't offer to handle bills I hadn't asked him to handle. When I mentioned meeting Rebecca to update my estate plan, he didn't ask what I was changing. He simply said, "Good." That single word meant more than he knew. Rebecca helped me review everything: beneficiaries, account access, emergency contacts, medical directives, property records. I made sure there could never again be confusion about who had authority. I also created a detailed record of the jewelry. Not just value, history. My mother's bracelet. My grandmother's pearls, Harold's watch, the sapphire brooch. I wrote who had owned each piece and why it mattered. Money tells you what something might sell for. History tells you why it shouldn't be sold without asking. One afternoon, Denise came over while I was organizing the new documents. She looked around Harold's study. "You've turned into Fort Knox." "Good," she smiled. "So what happens to Vanessa?" "That isn't my question anymore." Denise raised an eyebrow. "That's growth. Don't sound so surprised." She laughed. Then she noticed the bracelet on my wrist. "You're wearing it." I looked down. For years I'd kept my mother's bracelet tucked safely away because I was afraid of damaging it. After nearly losing it forever, that seemed foolish. "Yes. Aren't you worried about what losing it?" I touched the clasp. "I spent too much time protecting things by hiding them." Denise smiled. "And now I'm going to enjoy what belongs to me." That evening after she left, I sat on the porch. The neighborhood was quiet. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Someone was grilling dinner. Ordinary life had returned. Not the same life, but mine. I thought about Vanessa. Part of me still felt angry. Part of me pitied her. Neither feeling required me to rescue her. She had made choices. Now she had consequences. Marcus had made choices too. So had I. For years I thought being a good mother meant making room, giving chances, keeping peace, protecting people from pain whenever possible. But there comes a moment when protection becomes permission. I had reached mine. I didn't ruin Vanessa's career. I didn't call everyone she knew. I didn't try to humiliate her publicly. I simply stopped absorbing the cost of her decisions. She had to repay what she'd taken. She had to surrender authority she'd never possessed. She had to face the damage she'd done to her marriage. And I had to accept that not everything could be recovered. The pearls were still gone. Some trust was gone too. But as I sat there wearing my mother's bracelet, I realized something. Justice had not restored the past. It had restored the boundary. My property was mine. My home was mine. My decisions were mine. My mind was mine. And no one would ever again call taking those things from me an act of help. 6 months after Walter Hayes called me about the sapphire brooch, I woke on a Sunday morning and wore my mother's bracelet to church. That might not sound important. To me it was. For years I had treated the things I loved as though protecting them meant hiding them. The bracelet stayed in its box. Harold's watch came out only on anniversaries. The sapphire brooch waited for occasions that never seemed important enough. Losing them, even temporarily, changed something in me. I fastened the bracelet around my wrist and looked at myself in the mirror. My mother's hands had been thinner than mine, her skin darker from years of gardening. But when I looked at that bracelet, I could almost see her hand instead of mine. "Things don't matter, baby," she'd once told me. "But sometimes things carry people with them." She had been right. The things weren't the people, but they could carry the love. That morning I wore her bracelet and Harold's watch, both. I smiled at my reflection. Too much Harold would have said yes. Then he would have told me I looked beautiful anyway. Church felt ordinary. That was the gift. No lawyers, no inventories, no arguments about memory. Just hymns, familiar faces, and coffee afterward in paper cups. Denise spotted my wrist immediately. "Well, look at you. I decided jewelry works better when you wear it." She examined the bracelet. "And the watch, also mine. You're going to blind somebody if you add the brooch." I laughed. It felt good. Real laughter. Not the nervous kind I'd used when Vanessa made jokes about my memory. After the service, Marcus met me outside. He had been attending a different church since separating from Vanessa, but that morning he'd asked whether he could join me for lunch. He noticed the watch. "Dad's, yes." His expression softened. "I'm glad you got it back. So am I." We drove separately to a small restaurant near the river. Our relationship had changed during those 6 months. In some ways it was less comfortable. In better ways it was more honest. Marcus no longer arrived unannounced. He no longer treated concern as permission. If he wanted to help, he asked. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes I said no, and when I said no, he accepted it. That was how trust had begun returning. Not through grand gestures, through boundaries respected repeatedly. Over lunch, Marcus told me his separation from Vanessa had become permanent. They had filed for divorce. I put down my fork. Are you okay some days? That sounds honest. He smiled sadly. I learned it from you. I didn't ask for details. But Marcus volunteered some. Vanessa had entered financial counseling. She had sold her SUV. She'd moved into a smaller apartment. Some of her professional relationships had suffered, although Marcus said she was still working. The restitution payments for my missing pearls had begun arriving according to the agreement. Slowly, regularly. I didn't celebrate Vanessa's losses. That surprised Denise. She once asked me whether I felt vindicated. I told her no. Vindication would have meant enjoying the sight of Vanessa's suffering. I didn't. But neither did I interfere. That distinction mattered. Marcus stirred his coffee. Vanessa asked about you. My hand stopped. What did she ask? How you're doing? I considered that. What did you tell her? That you're fine? Good. She asked whether you'd ever speak to her again. There are questions that sound simple until you have to answer them. 6 months earlier, I would have said never. Now I wasn't sure. Do you want me to know? His answer surprised me. I don't want to be the person carrying messages between you. I smiled. That sounds healthy. My therapist says so. You're seeing someone for a few months. I didn't know. You didn't need to. I looked at him for a moment, then smiled again. Now that sounds very healthy. He laughed. I realized how much Marcus had changed too. For most of his life, I had been his mother first, and a separate human being second. Maybe I had helped create that. Mothers do things for children long after those children become adults. We solve, we advise, we worry. Sometimes we forget that loving an adult child also means allowing them ownership of their mistakes. Marcus had made his. I had made mine. Vanessa had made hers. The healthiest thing we could do was stop carrying one another's consequences. After lunch, Marcus walked me to my car. Before leaving, he said, "There's something I've wanted to tell you." What? When Vanessa first started talking about your memory, I think part of me wanted to believe her. That hurt. But I waited. Why? Because I was afraid of what you getting older. His eyes filled. After Dad, I started thinking about losing you too. Vanessa would say you forgot something, and instead of asking you, I panicked. I understood then. Not excused. Understood. Sometimes fear dresses itself up as protection, I said. Marcus nodded. I thought if I watched everything closely enough, I could stop something bad from happening. You can't stop me from aging. I know. You can't stop me from eventually needing help either. I know. But if that day comes, I need you to remember something. What help begins by asking. His eyes met mine. Not deciding. Not deciding. He hugged me. I held him tightly. That conversation repaired something no legal document ever could. The legal part had protected my property. This protected our relationship. A month later, Rebecca invited me to her office for what she called one final housekeeping matter. I laughed when she said it. After everything we'd been through, I had learned to distrust innocent phrases involving paperwork. But this one truly was simple. We reviewed my updated estate documents. My medical directives were clear. Financial authority was clearly defined. Emergency procedures were documented. Ownership records were organized. Marcus remained a beneficiary, but he did not automatically control anything simply because he was my son. He knew that. More importantly, he respected it. Before I left, Rebecca handed me the original copy of Walter's authorization, the one carrying the false version of my signature. What do I do with this? Keep it with your records. I looked at that signature. For months it had made me angry. Someone had copied my name and tried to turn it into permission. Now it looks strangely powerless. Ink. Nothing more. A signature only has meaning when it represents the choice of the person who made it. That one didn't represent mine. I put it into the folder. Thank you, Rebecca. You did most of the work. No. I smiled. Walter made the phone call. Rebecca nodded. One phone call. One phone call. Sometimes I still thought about what would have happened if he hadn't made it. Maybe Vanessa would have sold the brooch. Maybe the bracelet and watch would have disappeared permanently. Maybe she would have moved on to the silver, the paintings, the clock. Maybe Marcus would have continued watching me for signs that I was failing. Maybe I would have started watching myself. That possibility frightened me most. Because once someone repeatedly tells you not to trust your own mind, you can begin helping them. You hesitate. You apologize. You ask whether you're sure. You surrender decisions simply because fighting for them becomes exhausting. Walter interrupted that process with 5 words. "Did you authorize the sale?" he asked me. Not Vanessa, not Marcus, me. That question gave me something I hadn't realized I was losing: my own voice. Later that afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. I hadn't visited Harold in several months. I brought no flowers. He used to say cut flowers were just beautiful things waiting to die, which was an oddly depressing opinion for a man who bought me roses every anniversary. I sat on the bench beside his grave. For a while, I said nothing. Then I lifted my wrist. "Got your watch back." The cemetery remained quiet. "I know. You told me to insure everything." I smiled. "You were right." Wind moved through the trees. I told him about Marcus, about the divorce, about Rebecca, about the bracelet, about the pearls we hadn't recovered. Then I told him something I hadn't said aloud before. "I was scared, Harold." My voice cracked. Not of losing the jewelry. I looked down at his name carved into the stone. I was scared they were going to make me disappear while I was still here. That was the truth. Vanessa had taken objects. But the deeper injury had been the attempt to replace me with a story. Forgetful, confused, overwhelmed, unable to manage. Words can remove a person from her own life long before anyone takes her keys or signs her paperwork. I touched Harold's watch. "But I'm still here." The words made me cry. Then they made me smile. I was still here, driving my own car, paying my own bills, making my own appointments, choosing when I wanted help, choosing when I didn't, making mistakes sometimes, forgetting names occasionally, walking into rooms and wondering why I'd gone there, being 67, being human. None of those things surrendered my dignity. When I returned home, the afternoon sunlight filled the living room. The silver serving set was still in the cabinet. The paintings were still on the walls. The mantel clock ticked steadily. But the house felt different. Not because I'd secured it, because I'd reclaimed it. I walked upstairs and opened the safe. The sapphire brooch rested inside. Beside it was an empty velvet space where my grandmother's pearls once lay. For months, that empty space had hurt. That afternoon, I closed the safe without sadness. The pearls were gone. My grandmother wasn't. I still remembered her dressing table, her perfume, her laugh when 8-year-old me refused to remove those pearls. Vanessa could sell the necklace. She couldn't sell the memory. I went downstairs and sat on the porch as evening settled over the neighborhood. 6 months earlier, I thought justice would mean getting everything back. I was wrong. Justice wasn't restoration without loss. Sometimes justice meant naming what happened, protecting what remained, refusing to carry another person's consequences, and continuing your life without allowing betrayal to become your identity. I looked at my mother's bracelet, then Harold's watch. I had lost something, but I had recovered something larger. My son had learned to hear me again. I had learned to trust myself without needing anyone else's agreement. And the people around me had learned that age did not make my boundaries optional. My name was Laverne Underwood. I was a mother, a widow, a grandmother's granddaughter, a mother's daughter, a woman who had loved deeply enough to be betrayed deeply. But I was not helpless, I was not confused, and I was not anybody's property to manage. That evening I went inside, locked the door, and placed my keys in the ceramic bowl Harold had always called my landing strip, exactly where I had always put them. I smiled. Then I turned off the light. If there is one lesson I carried away from everything that happened, it is this: love does not give anyone ownership over another person's choices. Family members may worry about us. They may want to help. As we grow older, there may even come a day when we genuinely need more support than we once did. But real help begins with respect. It asks before acting. It listens before deciding. And it never uses age as an excuse to erase someone's voice. I also learned that boundaries are not cruelty. For much of my life, I believed being a good mother meant keeping the family together at almost any cost. I forgave quickly. I avoided confrontation. I tried to make everyone comfortable. But sometimes keeping the peace only teaches the person hurting you that there will be no consequences. I didn't need revenge against Vanessa. I needed the truth acknowledged. I needed my property protected. I needed my son to understand that concern without respect can become control. And I needed to remember that forgiveness, if it ever came, did not require giving someone the same access they had before. Most importantly, I learned never to confuse ordinary aging with losing your right to be heard. We forget things. We make mistakes. We misplace keys. We repeat stories. That does not make us invisible. And it certainly does not give another person permission to make decisions behind our backs. So I want to ask you something. If you had been in my place, would you have given Vanessa another chance? Or would that betrayal have ended the relationship forever? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if this story reminded you of something you've lived through, share whatever you're comfortable sharing. You never know when your words might help another person recognize that their boundaries matter too. And if you stayed with me all the way to the end, thank you. Please like this story and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories about family, betrayal, courage, and finding the strength to stand up for yourself. Wherever you're watching from tonight, remember this. Your age does not erase your independence. Your kindness does not cancel your boundaries, and your voice still belongs